Chapter 580. Ao Shiyun's injuries had already recovered under Chu Yang's incomplete heavy elixir. He no longer needed someone to carry him on his back. However, he was somewhat sad and silent along the way. "Senior brother, we've played enough. Why don't we just kill him?" Tan Tam raised his eyebrows. "Wouldn't it be too easy for him if we killed him?" Chu Yang rolled his eyes. "We still need to keep him alive. First, he can draw away the pursuers for us. Second, we can make those clans consume their strength. Third, the Meng clan is already done for. Wouldn't it be the best punishment for him to witness the destruction of his own clan with his own eyes?" "You're right. He won't know anything if we kill him. It would be a pity," Luo Kudi proudly explained while rubbing his crotch. "Hey, are you in pain?" GMO looked at Luo Kudi's crotch with some lingering fear. He couldn't help but scratch his own crotch. He thought, "Second young master Luo is an idiot. He has been like this for a whole day. My balls hurt just looking at him. But he still looks so happy. How much pain will his lower abdomen get after this?" Chu Yang made a gesture while speaking. Everyone bent down in an orderly manner and lay down in the underbrush. They then looked back at the same time. They saw two silhouettes in the distance. They seemed to be carrying a person on their backs. They were fleeing for their lives. Then a large group of people rushed out from behind with a rumbling sound. It looked like a group of ants was chasing two ants from afar. And these two ants were carrying a small ant on their backs. "This is fucking cool." Luo Kudi straightened his waist. He sighed and said, "This is crazy. They are chasing after him in such a hurry. How much hatred do they have for him?" Yes, this little Meng Luo hasn't lived in vain. There are only a few such clans in the three heavens. And all of them are chasing after him to kill him. This is the treatment of a fucking Grand Duke of the Ao clan. Jimo's eyes lit up. It seemed as if he was envious. "You're right. They've offended the Ao clan, the Xie clan, the Mo clan, the Dong clan, the Luo clan, the Gu clan, and the Ji clan. Now the O clan, the Black Devil clan, the Tiong clan, the Tu clan, the Li clan, and the Zhao clan." Dong Wuxiang counted, and couldn't help but jump in fright. He then said, "Fuck. This Meng Luo Gong has provoked a lot of trouble." "How courageous," second young master Luo Kudi said with admiration. "Our big brother is the most courageous one, ah. You must know that big brother has recruited all these people to deal with the Meng clan. In fact, Meng Luo hasn't done anything. This injustice is truly hard to explain. It's too numerous to write down." GMO clicked his tongue twice and made a conclusion. "Take a look at Meng Luo. Those brothers have learned a lesson from their mistakes. You can offend anyone in the future, but don't offend our big brother. Who knows when he'll be like Meng Luo? Ah, don't stare. Second young master Luo, I'm talking about you." Luo Kudi suddenly exploded. He grabbed Meng Luo's neck. "Who's Meng Luo?" "You are Meng Luo. Your whole family is Meng Luo." Everyone laughed. Amidst their carelessness, many people began to search in both directions. Chu Yang smiled. He then got up and said, "Let's go. These people have already divided into 4 groups. So we won't be afraid even if they catch up with us. Let's go to the Xie clan and look for Xie Dan Xiong." Everyone swept away like a gust of wind and quietly flew out. They went far away in the twinkling of an eye in the dark forest. Ao Xie Yin smiled. He said while walking, "Brother Chu, thank you for saving me today. I, Ao Xie Yin, will certainly repay you generously for this kindness." Chu Yang walked forward. He didn't even turn his head as he insipidly said, "Oh, how do you want to repay me if that's the case?" Ao Xie Yin was startled. He had only said these words for the sake of courtesy. How could he think of how to repay the other party at this time? His heart was in a mess right now. "Haha, I didn't expect you to repay me for saving you," Chu Yang said in a relaxed manner. "I didn't save you because of the general situation or the chaotic situation. Instead, I saved you because they wanted to deal with us. They wanted to shift the blame to us. We would have been in big trouble if you had died. Otherwise, I wouldn't have saved you even if you were the Grand Duke of a great clan of the upper 3 heavens. So, you don't need to thank me," Chu Yang concluded easily. "You'll be safe once we reach the Xie clan. I'll send you back to your clan at that time. We'll also be relieved." Ao Xie Yin smiled and said, "You don't care, But this is still a life-saving grace for me. I can't thank you with words. I'm not a long-winded person, so I won't say it. Haha. It's good that you won't say it. GMO came forward and said. Ao Xiaoyan smiled and said, Brother Chu, in fact, I still owe you a favor. Our Ao clan isn't stupid. Their shift may not have succeeded. Even if I die, they may not have been able to shift the blame to you. Chu Yang mischievously smiled. I know this better than you. Their shift wouldn't have succeeded if I hadn't saved you. That's because one of the people they wanted to deal with was called Motianji. Ao Xiaoyan smiled bitterly. Motianji may not be so resourceful. Our Ao clan isn't stupid either. But Motianji is so resourceful. Chu Yang said affirmatively. Then he looked at him from the corner of his eyes. Of course, your Ao clan isn't all stupid. But there are quite a few of them. He sneered. Your Ao Xiaoyan, not the Ao clan. Even if you die, the Ao clan will still be the Ao clan. But, you've already mentioned the Ao clan several times today. Why? Are you not confident? Ao Xiaoyan was stunned. Just now, in the depths of his subconscious, he did have this intention. He didn't expect Chu Yang to be so sharp. With Mo Tianji around, their shift wouldn't have succeeded. I saved you just in case. After all, the current Mo Tianji is still too weak. Chu Yang said something that Ao Xiaoyan didn't understand at all. After all, the current Mo Tianji is still too weak? Ao Xiaoyan smacked his lips in his heart for a long time. Gu Duxing passed by him. Brother Gu, are you really a Sword Emperor now? Ao Xiaoyan asked. Yes, first-grade Sword Emperor. Gu Duxing said honestly. Oh, Ao Xiaoyan was disappointed. Brother Dong, are you really a Saber Emperor now? Yes, first-grade Saber Emperor by luck. Oh, Ao Xiaoyan's face darkened. GMO, what's your cultivation level now? GMO's face darkened. I'm just a martial king. What's there to ask? Ao Xiaoyan was stunned. You're also a martial king? Little wolf, what are you now? I'm the same as GMO. Damn, this is so embarrassing. When Luo Kudi mentioned this matter, his happiness was immediately destroyed. This is so embarrassing. Ao Xiaoyan felt as if the world was spinning. How old are you this year? A king-level martial artist is so embarrassing. Then, I'm a few years older than you. And I'm only a martial king. Isn't that embarrassing? Brother Rui, what about you? Rui Butong said angrily. Are you deliberately making fun of me? I'm an 8th grade martial king, the weakest one. Ao Xiaoyan's face was full of tears. It's really a bottleneck. This is the second update. It's definitely not going to explode today. I'm currently struggling with one thing. This storm is definitely going to blow up in 3 days. But I'm thinking too much at the moment. I've set up 3 lines for this plot. So I'm indecisive. I've written and deleted tonight. Now I've written 2,000 words. No matter how I write, I feel that something is wrong. Let's discuss it. The first line starts from Mo Tianji. Pros and cons. The second line starts from Chu Yang. Pros and cons. The third line starts from Ao clan. Pros and cons. Of course, there's also the possibility of starting from Meng clan, or the few clans that are chasing Ao Xiaoyan. I'm not worried about not having anything to write. Instead, I have to write too much. How sad. In the book review and comment section, everyone came to express their opinions and opinions. Chapter 581. Chu Yang smiled. You don't need to ask about me. I'm a king-level expert. Yes, this is my junior brother Tan Tan. He's also a king-level expert. Brother Ao, please advise me when you have time. Advise my ass. Ao Xian bit his lips. He had an urge to cry. A group of king-level experts, sword emperors and saber emperors. These were all people who were once as famous as him. There were even a few who weren't as good as him before. Now his king-level expert, he really couldn't take it out. He felt too inferior. Brother Ao, may I ask what's your cultivation level now? GMO rolled his eyes and asked. Sigh. Ao Xian sighed. He didn't say anything, but he cried first. Miao Butong snorted coldly. He comforted him with schadenfreude. Brother Ao, you don't have to be like this. How much effort did we put in to have our current achievements? How much effort did we put in? We put in. Yes, there were dozens of times every day that we fainted from training. What kind of effort can lead to what kind of results? Actually, you're already very amazing now. This guy has said the exact words that Chu Yang used to provoke him. Motherfucker. Who knows how I felt in my heart when I heard these words? It's better to share the joy with others than to share the joy with others. Aoshian's face turned green and white. He lowered his head and hurried on. He didn't speak anymore. After a long time he sighed and said, I, Aoshian, have a surname of Aou. Suddenly, a strong sense of unwillingness rose in his heart. If they can do it, why can't I? One day, I'll take back this Aou. I'll be proud of the world. The leader was always under a lot of pressure, but lacked motivation. Now he was the one who was chasing, but he was full of motivation and no pressure. Once Aoshian let go of his pride, he immediately felt full of fighting spirit. First, I want to be Aoshian, the one and only Aoshian. Second, I want revenge. I want to take revenge for my uncles with my own hands. I want to take care of their families to the best of my ability. Third, I want to catch up with them and surpass them. I want to take back my title as the number one of the three heavens. We're all humans. We're all born and raised by our parents. We're all flesh and blood. I refuse to admit defeat. Along the way, the group encountered a few more pursuers and battles. Everyone only focused on escaping and did not linger in battle. Ao Shiyun and Miao Butong suffered some injuries, but they finally rushed out. This matter could be traced back to a month ago, after Mo Tianji had single-handedly set off waves in the three heavens. The entire three heavens had already been tossed about by a storm. The O clan, the Meng clan, the Tian clan, and the other clans were on high alert. The Xie clan, the Mo clan, the Dong clan, and the other clans were also on high alert. A great battle was about to break out. That day, Mo Tianji didn't speak for a long time after he had finished discussing with Dong Wulei, Luo Kewu, Jizhu, and the others. Brother Mo, what are you thinking about? Why are you frowning? Dong Wulei admired Mo Tianji's planning. So, he couldn't help but ask when he saw that Mo Tianji was in a dilemma. Everyone has just mentioned that Meng Luo, Tian Bu Hui, Tu Qian Hao, and the others aren't in the clan. So these people might be the main force in hunting down Ao Xie. I'm thinking about this. How should we deal with it? Mo Tianji solemnly said. We didn't say that these people aren't in the clan, right? Luo Kewu scratched his head in bewilderment. That's because the storm is faintly discernible. But it's too calm right now. A battle is a battle. But it's just a dense cloud and not a rain. What kind of battle is this? Mo Tianji softly said. Everyone had come here a moment ago. And you all said that the surrounding area was calm and peaceful. So this little brother made a conjecture. It certainly wouldn't be so calm if those people were here. They wouldn't have made any big moves. But there would have been constant small frictions if they hadn't. So it's clear that it's a group of crafty old foxes who are in charge of this matter. And that group of young ones isn't here. So, where did they go at such an important time if they aren't here? They're not hunting down Ao Xie. And there's nothing else. Those old guys are very mature and prudent. They like to wait and see in everything. They want to preserve their strength. And they can drag out any big matter. So they can cause several clans to be entangled with hundreds of years of enmity and grudges. But they will never cut the Gordian knot. This is the way any clan handles matters for a long time. But they don't have the sharpness of youngsters. So, I conclude that those people aren't here. Mo Tianji frowned and said, I'm actually thinking about Ao Xie. Ao Xie? Dong Wulei frowned. Brother Mo is thinking whether we should save him or not, right? In my opinion, saving Ao Xie will only bring us benefits and no harm. We should save him. Mo Tianji shook his head deeply. He raised his head and looked at the sky. He pondered for a long time. Then he said, You're wrong. Mo Tianji let out a deep breath. Then he resolutely said, We've been planning for so long. And we've finally made this chaos rise from the inside of the upper three heavens. But the reaction of the big clans is still not strong enough. Ao clan won't be able to swallow so many forces in one fell swoop if Ao Xie doesn't die, and the conflicts fade away. And all the big clans will go into seclusion to protect themselves. Moreover, Ao clan will probably treat this as Ao Xie's experience in the Jianghu if he doesn't die. And they won't make a move. then all our arrangements will be in vain. These old guys are too tolerant. Mo Tianji sighed. They only care about the survival and reproduction of their clans, sigh. Luo Kowu's eyes flickered. He said, so Aoxia Yin must die? Can't we save him? Aoxia Yin must die. Otherwise, Ao clan won't be able to get involved in this chaos. Mo Tianji nodded deeply. We can't have any help. Aoxia Yin may escape alive if we have any help. He sighed and said, Aoxia Yin is also an outstanding person. I, Mo Tianji, am also reluctant to let such a person die. But we must not hesitate when it's time to abandon him. But this, Luo Kowu was stunned. We will be the unlucky ones if we succeed in framing him. The corners of Mo Tianji's mouth twitched. He insipidly said, I've already told Xie Danqiong a few days ago. I told him to rush to Ao clan immediately after he has arranged the clan's affairs. And he wants to see Aoxia Yin. Wants to see Aoxia Yin? Dong Wulei and Luo Kowu opened their eyes wide. Yes, wants to see Aoxia Yin. Mo Tianji smiled. Let Xie Danqiong think of a way to stay in Ao clan until Aoxia Yin returns if Aoxia Yin isn't here. In any case, there are only two possibilities if Xie Danqiong wants to leave the Ao clan. The first is that Aoxia Yin has returned safe and sound. The second is that the news of Aoxia Yin's death has been transmitted back. But this matter must be done hidden immortal. Wonderful. Dong Wulei clapped his hands. Du Xiao wants to shift the blame to Xie Danqiong. But Xie Danqiong is in the Ao clan right now. So, it has nothing to do with him even if Aoxia Yin were to die 10,000 times. Mo Tianji slightly smiled and nodded. That's right. So, we have to wait patiently for the wind to cool down. The news I want to hear the most is the news of Aoxia Yin's death. Dong Wulei, Luo Kowu, and Ji Zhu slapped the table and applauded. But this matter still lacks something. Mo Tianji frowned and paced back and forth. His brows were tightly knitted. Lacks something? Brother Mo, this matter is foolproof. What else can be lacking? Dong Wulei had already prostrated himself in admiration. It lacks a little push force. It needs a very strong push force. Mo Tianji frowned. We have already intensified all the contradictions. It's like a 10,000-kilometer prairie, where all the green grass has already withered. We only need a little spark at this time to set the prairie ablaze. But where's this spark? But we can't take the initiative to make a move. We'll become passive if we take the initiative to make a move. In fact, it wasn't impossible for them to say that we were the ones with ambition. Therefore, we can only accumulate momentum, draw the bow, and wait for the trigger. He frowned and pondered hard. Where is the spark? Where is it? How can we make a big fire? How can we make this fire burn uncontrollably and destroy everything? We've already done enough. The entire Jianghu has already begun to shake. We'll immediately arouse suspicion if we make any more moves. But who will set this withered grass on fire for me? Will it set the prairie ablaze? He frowned and paced back and forth. His brows were knitted tighter and tighter. The look of contemplation in his eyes was getting more and more intense. Dong Wulei and Luo Kowu heaved a deep sigh. They looked at each other. They finally realized that their thoughts couldn't keep up with Mo Tianji's rhythm. Mo Tianji's thoughts had already gone beyond a certain category. They had risen to the point of overlooking everything. Mo Tianji stopped his footsteps after a long time. He tightly knitted his brows and muttered. Everything that we've painstakingly built would have been in vain if there's no fire. Don't tell me that Aoxia Yin's death isn't enough to form this big fire? Dong Wulei asked in bewilderment. That's the Ao clan's revenge war. It's completely different from the war of supremacy. The water isn't muddy enough if it's only a war of revenge. We won't be able to take advantage of it. Mo Tianji snorted. I just don't know. When will King of Hell Chu and the others return? Dong Wulei muttered. Brother Mo, what's your plan if they've already started by the time they return? Our previous preparations would have been in vain. It won't be in vain, Mo Tianji confidently said. We'll be in an invincible position even if they don't arrive in time. Then Mo Tianji's eyes suddenly lit up. King of Hell Chu? Return? Several thoughts arose in his mind in an instant. Will King of Hell Chu be so-so? Can it be? Can it be? Mo Tianji pondered hard. Then he finally said, "This King of Hell Chu is the cause of all these problems. I'm just using him. According to the rules and conventions of the world, he'll inevitably get involved since he's the cause. Therefore, King of Hell Chu shouldn't be able to escape from this big show. It's just karma. Then, will this big fire be ignited on King of Hell Chu?" Chapter 582. Mo Tianji had guessed correctly. This spark had indeed been ignited by King of Hell Chu. However, it had been several days later than he had expected. Therefore, this master of calculation and manipulation had been so worried that his hair had turned white. Ao clan. The sudden arrival of Xie Danxiong had also surprised the Ao clan. However, he was the Grand Duke of Xie clan and the future successor. Xie clan was weaker than Ao clan, but they still couldn't be neglected. Therefore, Ao clan's reception was very attentive. The clan lord of Ao clan, Ao Tianxing, had personally received him. "My son will take over Ao clan sooner or later. So, it's only beneficial to make such a big ally for me." "Elder Xie, haha. How is your father?" Ao Tianxing asked kindly. "My father is well. Thank you for your concern, Uncle Ao." Xie Danxiong bowed respectfully. He had greeted Ao Tianxing with the etiquette of a junior. He said, "This nephew and brother Xie Yin have always been close friends. We even joined hands at MT Dingjun. I haven't seen you for many days, and I miss you very much. So I specially came to visit you. Please forgive me." "Well, what's wrong with this?" Ao Tianxing stroked his beard. He smiled kindly and said, "This is a young man who values friendship and righteousness. I have always admired him. It's a great fortune for him to have a friend like you." He pondered for a moment and said, "It's just that. Xiao Quan Ao has gone to the northern wilderness. He hasn't returned yet." Xiao Quan Ao. Xie Danxiong's eyes bulged. He was almost shocked by this name. "Nephew Xie, you might as well stay here for a few days since you've come. The scenery of Ao clan is excellent." Ao Tianxing smiled and said, "Besides, Ao has been gone for several months. He should be on his way back now. Maybe he'll come back after a few days. You can play together when the time comes. This nephew will disturb Uncle for a few days if that's the case. I'll also listen to Uncle's teachings." Xie Danxiong took advantage of the situation and agreed. Xie Danxiong immediately stayed at Ao clan's residence without any trace of politeness. He ate fish and meat every day, delicacies of all kinds. Ao Xie Yin had stayed for more than 10 days. But Ao Xie Yin still hadn't returned. Ao clan had already felt that something was wrong. Why hasn't he come back? Xie Danxiong stayed for a few more days. Then he proposed to take his leave. He said that he wasn't feeling well. Ao Tianxing cordially urged him to stay and asked the family doctor to visit him. Xie Danxiong had no choice but to agree to stay for 3 more days. However, Xie Danxiong suddenly fell into a coma the next morning after the discussion. In fact, he was on the verge of death. The doctor was shocked when he saw Xie Danxiong's condition. He hurriedly reported it to the family head, Ao Tianxing. Ao Tianxing came to take a look and saw that Xie Danxiong's entire body was bruised. His eyeballs were almost popping out of their sockets. His inner breath was in a mess. His dantian was ruptured, and his meridians were on the verge of collapse. Ao Tianxing was startled. If this young lord of the Xie clan were to die in his own home, then he would be very happy. The Ao clan immediately summoned all the divine doctors and experts to treat Xie Danxiong's injuries. However, no matter how they looked, they could only frown, shake their heads, and sigh helplessly. He could only use his vitality to temporarily prolong Xie Danxiong's life. Other than that, there was no other way. Ao Tianxing immediately regretted his actions. 2 days ago, he said he was going to leave, so he let him go. But now he was hanging on. "Uncle Ao, you don't have to worry. I've had this disease since I was young, and there's no cure." Xie Danxiong comforted him weakly. "I only need one cough cough cough, expert cough cough cough, to inject a little cough cough vitality every day for a period of time, cough cough cough. And I'll be fine." "How long is a period of time?" Ao Tianxing asked anxiously. However, Xie Danxiong's head tilted to one side. He had already fainted. Ao Tianxing was speechless. A period of time? Fuck. Little brat. A day is also a period of time. A year is also a period of time. A generation is only a period of time. However, he was already unconscious. What should he do? Ao Tianqing went out with a belly full of depression. Time passed day by day. Xie Danxiong was still unconscious. There was still no news of Ao Xieyin. The atmosphere in the Ao clan was getting heavier and heavier. A month had already passed. Seeing that other clans and some loose cultivators had already returned one after another, and news from various sources kept coming in, the Ao clan finally couldn't bear it anymore. So they sent people to receive them. They went out in waves to receive and inquire. However, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There wasn't the slightest bit of news. Therefore, Ao Tianqing became impatient. The Ao clan simply mobilized a large force and searched in the direction of the northern wilderness. No one knew the importance of Ao Xieyin to the Ao clan. During this period of time, even ordinary people could feel the pressure of the 3 days. It was like an extremely hot summer day. There wasn't a trace of wind in the sky, and dark clouds were pressing down on the top of their heads. It was so hot that everyone was sweating profusely. However, the rainstorm that had been brewing for a long time didn't come down. Everyone's hearts, even though they were lying on the ground with nothing to do, were still beating anxiously. Moreover, this oppression was getting heavier and heavier. It was pressing down on everyone's heart from the sky. It was suffocating to death. It was suffocating to death. Everyone knew that it would be a destructive storm once this situation was broken. However, everyone would rather choose destruction when this oppression had reached an unbearable level. They would rather choose a violent storm to break this oppression. Another month passed. Everyone was anxious and restless. They couldn't sit or stand still. However, the atmosphere that had been extremely oppressive for these 3 days suddenly exploded. A piece of news spread throughout the 3 days like a bolt from the blue. The O clan, Tu clan, Black Devil clan, Meng clan, and Tian clan were originally comrades in the alliance. The O clan, Black Devil clan, and Tian clan had slaughtered all the experts of the Meng clan who had accompanied them on this mission. This included the Meng clan's Grand Duke, Meng Luo, 2 emperor-level experts, and all the king-level and revered martial artists. These big clans' eyes had turned red after they had returned. They had slaughtered the people of the Meng clan, who had been laughing and chatting merrily in the alliance. Then, they had led their army to the south. They had killed all the men, women, and children of the Meng clan. The old ancestor of the Meng clan, Meng Tianyu, was a middle-grade emperor-level expert. He had been in closed-door training. However, he had been forced out by Meng Tianyu. Then, all the emperor-level experts of the big clans had swarmed over. Meng Tianyu had attacked back with grief and indignation. However, the big clans had dispatched their old ancestors at the most critical moment. They were all high-level martial emperors. They had killed their old masters with their fists. Then, they had killed Meng Tianyu on the spot. The Meng clan had been burned to the ground. All the people who had participated in this battle, especially the ones who were in charge of the offensive, the Tu clan, the O clan, the Black Devil clan, and the Tian clan, had attacked with red eyes. They were ready to fight. This situation was as if the Meng clan had collectively dug up the ancestral graves of these clans. Then, they had raped all the female relatives of these clans. This was a bitter and deep hatred. They couldn't live under the same sky. Their methods were ruthless. They were merciless. They were cruel. They were cruel. They were brutal. They were something that had never happened in the 3 heavens. This massacre of an entire clan had happened in broad daylight. It had happened in broad daylight. It had bathed in the sunlight of the universe. It had happened openly, without the slightest scruple. There had been no concealment. A big clan had been removed from the list. The entire Meng clan had been uprooted by these big clans. Men, women, young and old. This included all their in-laws, and all their collateral relatives. These big clans had gone crazy. The death toll of this war had exceeded 100,000 people. This news had shocked all the big clans of the 3 heavens like a thunderbolt in a clear sky. Who would have thought that this unspeakable oppression would be broken by an internal strife? There had been a split in the alliance. The Meng clan had brazenly challenged all the other clans. Even Motianji's eyes had suddenly popped out of their sockets when he had heard this news. The cup in his hand had fallen to the ground with a bang and had been smashed to pieces. Then, he had pinched his thighs and arms until they were bruised. He had finally believed that he wasn't dreaming. Even Motianji had such a reaction. So, it was easy to imagine the reactions of other people. The big clans hadn't said a word. So no one knew the reason behind this incident. But everyone was whispering and speculating. The Ming clan had suffered such an extermination blow. What kind of heaven-defying, and heaven-striking thunderbolts had done to provoke the crazy wrath of so many clans? The Ming clan is too bold, right? Motherfucker. They were already on the opposite side of 7 or 8 big clans. But they still had the courage to offend all their allies at this time? They shouldn't have been so stupid. Why did they do this? There were many different opinions in the 3 heavens. One person said, "There's no doubt about this matter. Meng Luo must have raped the young girls of all the big clans. And he must have provoked public anger." Another person retorted, "Nonsense. That's impossible. You don't understand the aristocratic clans. The big clans wouldn't be so decisive over this matter. Meng Luo definitely wouldn't have raped the young girls." He spoke resolutely and decisively, but he then doubtfully said, "Perhaps Meng Luo's father had taken the mistresses of these big clans to his bed." Everyone felt that this matter was very likely. Another person interrupted, "That's reasonable. As the saying goes, if the upper beam is crooked, the lower beam will be crooked. But the lower beam is crooked, so it means that the upper beam is crooked. Meng Luo likes to rape young girls. Perhaps his father likes to rape. That? Many people nodded. That's reasonable. So, the alliance of the big clans must have given this old pervert an opportunity. Haven't you seen him enjoying himself in the alliance? It's said that the mistresses of the big clans are old. But they must have been very charming. Haven't you heard that people say that the older they are, the more chewy they are?" Then everyone sighed at the same time. Meng Luo's father could have died in such a way. He would have died a romantic death. But it was unwise to implicate the entire clan. But then someone retorted, "What do you know? A man's lust comes to him. He doesn't care about the clan." Then everyone pondered for a while. They then put themselves in Meng Luo's shoes, and nodded one after another. It wasn't known where these words had come from, but it seemed that someone had deliberately spread them. So the more it spread, the fiercer it became. And it slowly became an uproar. Chapter 583. While the storm was brewing in the lower 3 heavens, an earth-shattering event had also happened in the lower 3 heavens. The Iron Cloud Empire had finally unified the world and dominated the lower 3 heavens. Even the grassland wolves of the northern frontier had surrendered. The lower 3 heavens had become the territory of the Iron Cloud Empire. Tai Butian had finally ruled the world. All the land under the heavens belonged to the emperor. All the people on the land were the emperor's subjects. While the whole nation was celebrating, the emperor had only sent Tai Longcheng as a representative to celebrate with the world. And he himself had not come out from the palace. The Empress Wu Qianqian was about to give birth. The emperor could not leave. After this news was spread, the whole nation rejoiced. Not only did no one say anything, but everyone had always thought that the emperor was loyal and righteous, and was a rare good man in the world. For Iron Cloud Empire, to have such a monarch was the fortune of the world, and the fortune of all its citizens. Some people also noticed that although the prince of the Iron Dragon realm was celebrating with the officials, his eyes often looked in the direction of the palace involuntarily. There was a trace of anxiety and uneasiness in his eyes. It seemed that he could not wait to leave this place and return to the palace. In the palace, Lan Meixian was anxiously guarding outside the delivery room. She kept pacing back and forth, her face full of anxiety and heartache. Moaning sounds came from the delivery room, as if it was forcibly suppressing. On one side sat a handsome couple. The man was gentle and elegant, while the woman was graceful and luxurious. They looked like a couple of immortals. Lan Meixian kept sighing and pacing back and forth. Finally she said, "Ruolin, are the midwives you brought from the upper 3 heavens useful?" "Fei Ling, I don't want to criticize you, but what good midwives do you have in the Chu clan?" Didn't I tell you to go to the Lan clan to find Granny Chui? You didn't listen. Now your Chu clan has sent 5 midwives. But why haven't they come out after half a day? What are these midwives doing? This couple was Yang Ruolin and Chu Feiling. It turned out that Lan Meixian was still worried about the midwives in the palace. She was also worried that the secret would be leaked. Lan Meixian immediately sent a message to Yang Ruolan. Then, Yang Ruolan and Chu Feiling personally brought the midwives down. Yang Ruolan smiled and said, "Master, you don't have to worry. The people I've brought along are all experienced and powerful. Besides, I've already checked. Junior sister's fetus is in the right position, so there won't be any accidents." She found it a little funny. The midwife of the Lan family was of course good, but if her master didn't go, how could she and her husband invite her? That was the Lan family. But why is it taking so long? Lan Meixian was extremely anxious. "Master, there's something you don't know." Yang Ruolan found it hard to say. "It's not that easy for a woman to give birth to a child. When I gave birth to my child, I also spent a full day and night in extreme pain." Speaking up to hear, he couldn't help but feel dejected. Thinking about her missing child, she was overcome with grief, and her eyes turned red. Chu Feiling hurriedly comforted him. Chu Feiling was a little restless. He wouldn't have come this time if he wasn't worried that his beloved wife would have an accident when she went out alone. How could his wife's junior sister give birth to a child while he, the senior brother-in-law, sits outside and waits? "That damned king of hell Chu," Lan Meixian said angrily. "He stirred up trouble and left just like that. That bastard. How much grievance and pain has Tian suffered because of him? Now his child is about to be born at such an important time. But he's nowhere to be seen." She heavily stomped her foot. "This is really infuriating." Yang Ruolan smiled bitterly and thought, "That person doesn't know anything. How can he appear here?" The moaning sound inside suddenly became louder. Then, the voice of the midwife was heard. "Endure it. Don't exert yourself now. You have to accumulate your strength. Otherwise, you won't have any strength when the child is born. That won't be good for the child. Won't be good for the child." This sentence seemed to have infinite power. Tai Butian's voice immediately became softer. She could only be heard taking deep breaths to accumulate her strength. "My poor disciple." Lan Meixian sat down on a chair and covered her face with her hands. She couldn't help but shed tears. "I don't know what your senior owes that man. She's sacrificing so much for him." She sat for a while. Then she stood up again. She sat down again and stood up again. Finally, she walked to the front of the portrait of the Empress and knelt down piously. "Mother, I, Lan Meixian, have never believed in ghosts or gods. But I believe in you now. I'm willing to worship the Empress for a lifetime, as long as you can help Tian give birth to a child. May I be struck by lightning if I violate this oath." Yang Ruolan's eyes were somewhat moist. Her master, Lan Meixian, had always been strong and stubborn. She had never married. She had always been proud and aloof. She had never respected the heavens or feared ghosts or gods. But she was now praying so piously for her disciple. It could be seen that her heart was in chaos. On the other side, Wu Qianqian had already knelt in front of the portrait of the Empress. She didn't know how long she had been kneeling for. But she was praying in her heart. You must give birth to a healthy child. Mother will be safe." The moaning sound inside the room suddenly became louder again. It seemed as if it couldn't suppress the pain. Lan Meixian banged her head on the ground. She was in extreme pain and heartache. She suddenly turned her head and said, "Ruolan Impi, can't she use her vital energy to give birth to a child? It's so painful. Tian, how can she bear it?" Yang Ruolan revealed an embarrassed look on her face and said, "Master, you don't know. Even a supreme expert has to pass through this hurdle when giving birth to a child. This has nothing to do with vital energy. She'll be no different from an ordinary woman at this moment, no matter how great her cultivation is." Sigh. Lan Meixian turned her head in disappointment. She kowtowed on the ground and prayed piously. "Bear with it a little longer. Bear with it a little longer. It'll be done soon. It'll be done soon." The midwife's gentle voice was comforting her. Her voice seemed to have the power to calm people's hearts. Tai Butian was moaning in pain in the inner room. Her complexion was deathly pale. Then it turned red after a while. Her hands were tightly grasping the edge of the bed. Blood was seeping out from her fingernails. Don't worry. It'll be fine. It's just that this is your first time giving birth to a child. The child is very healthy. It's up to you now. You must hold on. The midwife kept comforting her. Tai Butian nodded weakly. Her eyes emitted a resolute look. She said in a low voice, "My child will be born safely." Finally, the outside couldn't bear it any longer. Good. Harder. Harder. Yes. It's coming out. It's coming out. The child is coming out. Wah! A loud and clear cry of a baby was heard. It seemed as if a wisp of golden sunlight had pierced through the dark clouds in the sky. Tai Butian finally relaxed after hearing this heavenly cry. She exposed a happy and relieved smile at the corners of her mouth. Then she fainted from exhaustion. My child with him, has been born. Everyone's body shook as this cry spread. They exposed an ecstatic look on their faces. How's the child? How's the Lord? Lan Meixian hastily asked in a loud voice. Very good. Both are very good. One is fat and one is small. Mother is safe. Even experts like Lan Meixian, Chu Feiling, and Yang Ruolan felt a sense of exhaustion when these 4 words "mother is safe" were heard. It seemed as if all the strength in their bodies had been consumed in this silent cry. But their hearts had finally settled down. God bless. Lan Meixian knelt down in front of the Empress portrait in ecstasy. She kowtowed as if she was pounding garlic. Thank you, Empress. Thank you for being so good. From now on, Lan Meixian will worship you day and night. I will burn incense all year round. Thank you, Empress, for making my sweet mother safe. Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolan looked at each other. They both saw that the rims of each other's eyes were red. Lan Meixian calmed down after a long time. She stood up, picked up the teacup, and drank a mouthful of tea. She wiped her tears, and said with an embarrassed smile, "You 2 little girls. You've angered me to death. But you've also worried me to death. I'd rather bleed than cry. I've only cried twice in my life. And it's all because of you 2 disappointing little girls." She wiped her tears again. Then she said in a somewhat angry tone, "The first time was when you gave birth. I stayed on the roof of your Chu clan for a night. And I shed tears for you the whole night. The second time was because of this infuriating little girl. You ruined my child, and didn't even let me know about it. You only knew how to bear it by yourself. Alas, Master." Yang Ruolan's face was streaked with tears. Wu Qianqian had been dumbstruck when she had heard the cry of the baby. Then, she seemed to have woken up from a dream. She frantically kowtowed to the statue a few times. Then she jumped up and ran towards the delivery room. "Don't go in." Yang Ruolan quickly grabbed her. "You can't go in now." "Why? You can't go in because you can't go in." Lan Meixian reprimanded her with a smile. "The baby will be carried out in a while. Why are you in such a hurry? How can you casually barge into this delivery room? You're such an ignorant little girl." Wu Qianqian's face turned red. She was somewhat embarrassed. The sound of water splashing could be heard inside. It seemed as if someone was bathing the baby. A gentle sound of footsteps was heard after a while. Then, a benevolent-looking midwife came out with a small swaddle in her arms. She smiled as she walked. "It's very strange. I've delivered so many babies. Most of them have their eyes closed when they're born. But this little guy is different. His 2 black eyes are wide open, and they're rolling around. I don't know what he can see." Another midwife behind her said with a smile, "He's so young. He won't be able to see anything even if his eyes are open. He'll need at least a day to open his 7 orifices. Then, he'll be able to see something. That's why it's so strange." "Really?" Everyone scrambled to surround the baby. They cautiously moved closer to take a look. They saw a dense crowd of heads above the swaddle. Chapter 584. "So pretty," Lan Meixian said. Wu Qianqian pursed her lips. "Why is this baby a little wrinkled all over? He looks like an old man." To think that Master Lan could actually say the word pretty. Wu Qianqian didn't know that newborns were all like this. The baby in front of her was already very smooth. At this moment, she suddenly heard Yang Ruolan moaning softly. Her body was on the verge of collapsing. Lan Meixian was quick to react. She supported her and said, "Rulan, what's wrong?" Young Rulan opened her eyes. She was a little confused. Then she looked at the baby and said dejectedly, I'm fine." Chu Feiling also noticed the abnormality. He rushed forward to support his wife. He asked repeatedly, "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" Young Rulan looked at the baby in swaddling clothes. After a long time, she weakly repeated, "I'm fine." However, a feeling of perilous waves suddenly rose in her heart. When she saw Tai Butian, although they were very close, she clearly knew that she was her junior sister. But when she saw this little baby, a feeling of blood connection suddenly rose in Yang Rulan's heart. It was as if this little baby in front of her was the closest person to her. This feeling was very mysterious. Moreover, Yang Rulan had a vague feeling. Why does this baby look so similar to my baby when he was just born? Then she smiled bitterly and shook her head. All newborns in the world are very similar. When they just come out of the mother's womb, they are all wrinkled all over. How can you tell whose face they look like at this time? It's simply impossible. At least a few days later, the baby's skin will slowly relax and become round and smooth. Only then can you see the rough outline of the baby. Looks like I've really gone crazy from missing my son. After looking for a while and reporting the good news, the midwives hurriedly carried the baby in again, because Tai Butian had already woken up and was anxiously waiting for the baby. When the midwives carried the baby in, Tai Butian actually sat up with strength that she didn't know where she got it from. The few midwives were so frightened that they shouted, Don't! Quickly lie down. My great-grandmother. How can you sit up now?" Finally, she held the child in her arms. Tai Butian looked at the tender face in her arms and couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, as if she owned the whole world. A feeling of extreme happiness spread uncontrollably from the bottom of his heart. This kind of happiness and satisfaction far surpassed the sense of accomplishment of unifying the world. It was as if the entire world was not as important as this little person in his arms. "Chuyang, do you know? Our child was born. It's a boy." Looking at the baby's tender little face, Tai Butian couldn't help but lean forward and kiss him gently. Her heart was full of tenderness. "I will take good care of him. I will educate him well so that when he grows up, he will be even more outstanding than you." She paused and suddenly changed her tone. "No, I don't want him to be more outstanding than you. I just want him to live a peaceful and happy life without any disasters, even if he's not that outstanding." Yang Ruolan foolishly looked in the direction of the inner chamber as she watched the midwife carry the baby inside. She was absent-minded and felt as if her heart had become empty. "What's wrong?" Chu Feiling sensitively felt his wife's abnormality and asked with concern. Everyone had gathered around to take a look just now. Chu Feiling didn't have the nerve to go closer. He only glanced from afar and didn't see clearly. "Nothing." Yang Ruolan weakly snuggled in her husband's arms. She thought of the strange feeling just now. She opened her mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. "I'll stay here for a while. I'll take a good look at the baby when he's a month old and has grown up. Junior sister's baby is so cute." Yang Ruolan whispered enviously. Chu Feiling's heart ached. He knew that his wife was thinking of his son. He couldn't help but sigh. Lan Meixian kept asking, "Is it okay? Can I go in? Can you let me go in first?" After a long while, the inside was tidied up. The midwife finally came out and reported, "You can go in. But be careful. Walk lightly and don't make any sound." Lan Meixian was already impatient. She slowly floated in like a ghost. Not to mention the sound of the wind, she didn't even make any dust. Chu Feiling rubbed his forehead. He was speechless. "Is it necessary?" Just to not make any sound, she mobilized all her martial power to launch the great feather mental cultivation method. Yang Ruolan weakly took 2 steps back. Her eyes were fixed on the inner chamber. She didn't even blink. Her soul had flown out of her body. It was unknown what she was thinking about. She unconsciously took 2 steps back and sat down. If it weren't for Chu Feiling's sharp eyes and quick hands, she would have sat directly on the ground in the inner chamber. Lan Meixian nervously rubbed her hands. Tian, does it still hurt?" "It doesn't hurt anymore." Tai Butian gently shook her head. The baby in her arms restlessly stretched out his hands and kicked his legs. His small black eyes rolled around. He seemed to be very intelligent. Tai Butian couldn't help but smile warmly. She said, "Master, look at him. He's so naughty." Lan Meixian also smiled. She slowly sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the child. Then she sighed and said, "This little bastard is hurting my good disciple to death. Wait until he grows up. This old woman will ruthlessly spank his ass." "You're not allowed." Tai Butian glared. Lan Meixian smiled. "Look at how nervous you are. Look, you're so protective of him and spoiling him. I think you're the emperor. You're spoiling him too much." Since ancient times, a loving mother has spoiled her son. Tai Butian rolled her eyes. She said somewhat willfully, "So what? I have plenty of family properties to spoil him." Lan Meixian was speechless. She grabbed the little guy's hand and said with a smile, "Let me see how this little guy's physique is first. Your senior sister's baby only has an above-average physique. Let me see what kind of child your exquisite ice heart can give birth to." Tai Butian pursed her lips and smiled. She said, "I'll take whatever physique he has. I'm a little worried now. If his physique is good, I'm afraid I'll have to roll around in Jianghu in the future. Alas, how dangerous would that be?" Lan Meixian rolled her eyes and said, "Don't you want your son to become a matchless powerhouse?" Tai Butian slowly shook her head. "I only want him to be safe. Everything is enough." "You're really useless." Lan Meixian scolded with a smile. Then, she carefully poured her vitality into the baby's body. Suddenly, her complexion changed. Her face turned red as she muttered, "There's something wrong with his meridians." "Ah." Tai Butian was startled. She immediately became anxious. "Master, what's wrong? Is it serious? How can his meridians be so wide?" Lan Meixian sucked in a breath of cold air. "I've seen many children. How can this one be so monstrous?" Then her complexion changed again. And it turned deathly white. Strange. Lan Meixian frowned. She had a pensive look on her face. "It's somewhat similar to the legendary Iron Blood Loyal Heart physique. But it seems to be higher. I'm not sure. I've never seen such a physique." "Then is it good or bad?" Tai Butian asked nervously. "Of course it's good. It's so good that it can't be better." Lan Meixian raised her head in a daze. She sized up the iron-clad imperial palace all around. Then she muttered, "Could it be that the inside of this imperial palace is a place with good feng shui? How can so many monstrous physiques appear here? This child's physique. I can't understand it." Lan Meixian solemnly said, "But it's no small matter. You mustn't spread this news. Otherwise." Tai Butian nodded. "I know, master." She beamed with joy as she looked at this little person. Then she lovingly said, "I didn't expect this little guy to be so extraordinary. He's worthy of being his father's son." Lan Meixian's complexion darkened. She snorted in an unfriendly manner. Then she softly said, "Are you still in pain?" "I'm not in pain anymore." Tai Butian strangely looked at her master. "Take that medicinal pill that is hanging in front of your chest," Lan Meixian urged. "Pill?" Tai Butian was surprised. "What pill?" "That pill that's hanging on your neck." Lan Meixian was somewhat anxious. "Hurry up. A woman giving birth to a child is like passing through the gates of hell. She has experienced life and death. It's a good opportunity for you to change your physique. Take that pill now. Hurry up. It'll be too late by the time your body recovers." "Change my physique?" Tai Butian touched the purple crystal bottle on her chest. She was somewhat reluctant to part with it. "Yes. Hurry up," Lan Meixian anxiously said. "You used to have the icy heart physique. But the icy heart physique disappeared without a trace after you lost your virginity. But it's a good opportunity for you to rebuild your body after giving birth. Moreover, you have a miraculous medicine in your hand. You may become the first person in history to have the icy heart physique and jade bones physique once you take it. Hurry up." "But what about the child?" Tai Butian was somewhat unwilling. Ruolan, you take care of the child first," Lan Meixian called out. Young Ruolan immediately rushed in, as if she had heard the heavenly voice. She had been waiting for such a call for too long. Under Lan Meixian's urging, Tai Butian finally took out the heavy pill. But she still didn't take it immediately. She said, "Master, are you sure that this pill alone can? This is a heavy pill. Silly child." Lan Meixian saw that she was still hesitating. She became anxious. "This is a rare heavy pill. If this pill can't change your physique, then no one else in the world can change your physique. I don't know what kind of luck you have. You've actually met the divine dragon-like master of tribulation sword. You're really lucky." The divine dragon-like master of tribulation sword. Tai Butian exclaimed. Suddenly, huge waves rolled in her heart. Her mind was in a mess. She couldn't extricate herself. She had mixed feelings for a moment. Chu Yang is actually the master of tribulation sword? No wonder, no wonder. Tai Butian muttered. No wonder Chu Yang is so powerful. No wonder Chu Yang has advanced so quickly. No wonder he can turn the situation around. No wonder he can defeat Di Wuqingro. But she was startled for a moment. Then, she suddenly grabbed Lan Meixian's hand. "Master, this matter can't be spread out." She was a talented emperor of a generation. How could she not know the importance of this matter? She immediately sensed the danger Chu Yang was in after she realized it. Chapter 585. Lan Meixian smiled and said, "Don't worry. I know the severity of the matter. I won't spread it. No one is allowed to." Tai Butian said resolutely and solemnly, "As long as you agree, I will take it immediately. But if Master were to say it out loud, even if you were to say it to another person, this disciple would have no choice but to die immediately." Lan Meixian took 2 steps and said, "As long as you promise me that you will cultivate the icy heart jade bone to the peak, I will promise you." "Good." Tai Butian opened the purple crystal bottle without hesitation. She took out the elixir and stuffed it into her mouth, without even looking at it. Her eyes were shining. "Master, don't forget your promise." "This child. How can I go back on my word?" Lan Meixian didn't realize that her disciple had put a curse on her. She immediately helped Tai Butian up. She placed one hand on her back, and the other hand on her head. She said, "Eliminate all distracting thoughts and circulate your energy to digest the elixir. Don't think about anything else." Tai Butian was just about to speak, when she felt a wave of heat rising from her dantian. In an instant, the pain all over her body actually disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Then, an extremely comfortable feeling spread through her limbs and bones at the same time. At the same time, a surge of spiritual energy surged into her back and entered her dantian. Then it spiraled up with that spiritual energy. A spiritual energy shrouded her from the top of her head. When the 3 forces came into contact, they suddenly scattered into thousands of spiritual energy flows. Tai Butian immediately felt that her whole body seemed to be changing slightly. Then, all the changes gathered together and turned the world upside down. After a long time, Lan Meixian fell back with a thud and fainted. She had used up all her energy to help Tai Butian change her physique this time. If she didn't cultivate for a month or so, she wouldn't be able to recover. Tai Butian was sweating all over. Her body was oily, and she didn't know what had seeped out. But she felt that her body had completely recovered. Her whole body felt light, as if it was about to fly. Moreover, there seemed to be many more profound insights in her mind. She propped herself up and found that she was fine. It just so happened that there was a shortage of hot water in preparation for the birth. She immediately ordered the hot water to be transported in. She washed her body properly and stood up. She immediately felt that she was very different. Lan Meixian woke up. Her body was weak, but her spirit was extremely excited. She grabbed Tai Butian's hand and checked it. She laughed happily and said, "Good, good. I, Lan Meixian, finally have a successor to my mantle. 100 meridians opened, dantian blue sea, exquisite ice heart, crystal clear jade bones, all in one." Her eyes were burning. "Tiantian, you must cultivate diligently. The current you has basically swept away all the obstacles in your cultivation. You're standing at the peak of frozen heart jade bone. You must not disappoint this gift from the heavens." She paused for a moment and said, "Only when you become strong will you be able to better protect your child. You may be the emperor of the lower 3 heavens, but you need to know that the upper 3 heavens will not take care of your son just because you are the emperor. Tai Butian's heart shuddered as he replied, I understand. Lan Meixian smiled in a gratified manner and said, I will take Qian Qian back to the upper three heavens when the child is 1 month old. You take good care of the child and cultivate well. You must also go up when the time is right. The upper three heavens is where geniuses like you should stay. Tai Butian was non-committal, her gaze somewhat perplexed. After a long while, Tai Butian said slowly, Let Qianqian in. I want to have a chat with her. Lan Meixian nodded and walked out. Not long after, Wu Qianqian walked in gently. You're looking for me? Tai Butian looked at her with a complicated gaze. After a long while he said, Have you decided? Wu Qianqian lowered her head and said softly, Yes. Tai Butian heaved a long sigh of relief and said, Good. Tomorrow, I will issue an imperial edict. Empress Wu Qianqian has died in childbirth. The whole nation will mourn. Wu Qianqian was silent for a long time. Then she said softly, I'm worried. She sighed and said, I'm worried about both. Tai Butian smiled and said, Worried? Haha. Qianqian, if you see him, don't tell him about this. Her expression became serious at the end of her words. Wu Qianqian bit her lips until they turned pale. After a long while she said, Okay. Tai Butian smiled. Qianqian, what do you think about calling this child Tai Yang? Tai Yang? Yang is in the sun. Wouldn't that be the same name? Tai Yang, as in the sky drilling poplar, a steel-like sky drilling poplar. It has no branches and grows straight. It bathes in the sun and reaches the sky. Tai Butian said slowly and heavily. Tai Yang is the only successor of the Iron Cloud Empire. He will be the future overlord of the world. Her eyes flashed and shot out the brilliance of a sovereign. She said in a deep voice, I must conquer an iron country for my son. Long live. Outside, young Rulin was holding the child. She couldn't bear to let him go. She felt more and more warmth in her heart. That feeling of blood connection made her unable to let go of the child after she held him. This is the first time I've seen you like someone else's child so much, Chu Feiling said with a smile. Carry him and see, young Rulin suddenly said. Chu Feiling took the child very carefully and hugged his warm and soft little body in his arms. The little child seemed to be grinning happily. Chu Feiling was almost conquered by this smile in an instant. A strange feeling suddenly shot into his heart like a bolt of lightning. Chu Feiling's whole body trembled. He couldn't help but murmur, What a cute little guy. I feel like he's a member of my Chu clan. Young Rulin's whole body trembled violently. Her phoenix-like eyes opened wide. She said in a trembling voice, You also have this feeling? At this moment, Lan Meixian walked out. Rulin, I have to wait for a month before I can go back. You and Feiling can go back first if you have something to do. It's okay. Master, we'll accompany you. We'll go back together after a month, young Rulin said hurriedly. All right. Lan Meixian nodded. I'll take a rest first to recover my primary power. I've used up all my primary power today. She walked away after she said this. Young Rulin's heart was surging with emotions. I have this feeling, and my husband also has this feeling. What does this mean? Why do I have this feeling? Why? She stood there in a daze. Tai Butian had already walked out. She took the child from Chu Feiling's arms and thanked them with a smile. Thank you, senior sister and senior sister's husband. I've really troubled you this time. Why did you walk out now? Young Rulin asked anxiously. It's fine. Tai Butian chuckled. If senior sister and brother-in-law have nothing to do, why don't you stay here for a few more days? Okay. Young Ruolan didn't wait for Chu Feiling to reply to this request. The next day, Iron Cloud Empire issued 2 imperial decrees at the same time, shocking the world. The Grand Elder of the Iron Cloud Empire was born. His Majesty the Emperor personally gave him the name Tai Yang. He was bestowed the position of Grand Elder, and was confirmed as the successor of the Iron Cloud Empire. Amnesty for the world. The entire nation rejoiced. The Empress of the Iron Cloud Empire, Wu Qianqian, was born due to dystocia. She was posthumously conferred the title of loyal, filial, benevolent, righteous, and Xiao Empress, the only mother of the nation. The 7-son nation mourned. Buried in the imperial mausoleum, the entire nation mourned. These two pieces of news, one happy and one sad, shocked the world. Half a month later, bad news came from the Iron Cloud Empire. The master of Butian Pavilion, King of Hell Chu, had a relapse of his old injuries. He died the night before yesterday. He was posthumously conferred the title of First Prince with a different surname. The entire nation mourned. When the third imperial decree was issued, no one knew that Tai Butian had held the imperial seal in her hand and sat in front of the imperial decree in a daze for a long time. When the imperial seal finally fell with a loud bang, 2 drops of tears flowed out of Tai Butian's eyes. Day after day passed. The child's skin had fully grown. His whole body was tender and tender. His white skin was tinged with rosy. He was extremely lovable. Young Ruolan came to see him several times a day. The more she looked, the more her heart palpitated. After the child's face had grown, the more young Ruolan looked at him, the more it overlapped with the image of her son in her memory. That was her only son. She would recall him several times a day over the past few years. In her dreams, her son seemed to be in her arms. How could that memory not be deep? On this day, young Ruolan's mind flashed. She remembered King of Hell Chu, whom she had taught a lesson 3 days ago. She vaguely felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what. Finally, that day, young Ruolan murmured, "I heard junior sister say that this is King of Hell Chu's child. But the last time I saw King of Hell Chu, his appearance was completely different from this child's." Different? Chu Failing was reading a book. He answered indifferently, but young Ruolan suddenly stood up, startling the absent-minded Chu Failing. He raised his head and saw his wife's eyes wide open. She murmured, "Different? Why not?" Although this child inherited some of his mother's features, his sharp eyebrows, nose and masculine aura definitely came from his father. But why not? Young Ruolan's whole body trembled. Why not? Why? Chu Failing groaned and lay on the chair. He thought to himself, Ruolan is going crazy thinking about her son again. What does it have to do with us, whether or not they look alike? But young Ruolan had already stood up. "I'll go find junior sister." "Hey, it's late at night now." Chu Failing hurriedly stopped her, but young Ruolan turned a deaf ear. She had already gone far away. Chu Failing smiled bitterly. Looking at the bright and dark candlelight, he thought to himself, "When I go back this time, I must put in more effort to search. Otherwise, looking at my wife like this really makes me feel uneasy." That night, Tai Butian fed her child milk and let him fall asleep. Hearing that young Ruolan had come, she hurriedly received her. Originally, the children of the royal family were basically nursed by wet nurses. But Tai Butian firmly refused and insisted on raising them herself. This decision had once been greatly approved by young Ruolan. Tian, can I ask you something?" Young Ruolan came and looked at the sleeping child. Her heart was thumping wildly, and her lips were dry. She asked nervously. Chapter 586. What's the matter? Senior sister, feel free to speak your mind. Tai Butian was very grateful to her senior sister and said heartily, "Can I ask, what does this child's father look like?" Young Ruolan's voice was trembling. Tai Butian cast a gentle glance at her son, who was sound asleep. She pursed her lips and smiled. "Senior sister, is there a need to ask? This child's appearance is almost exactly the same as his father's." "Exactly the same?" Young Ruolan's voice was trembling. She felt as if a thunderbolt had struck her heart. "Did I find the wrong person last time?" Her body trembled and swayed, giving Tai Butian a fright. Suddenly, a crazy thought popped up in her mind. Could it be, that person is my son? And this little fellow that I feel so close to, is my grandson? She clearly knew that this was a bit whimsical, unrealistic, and too speculative, but she couldn't help thinking about it. She couldn't help but deduce, and yearn for it. Young Ruolan's face was flushed red for a moment, but it would turn pale in the next moment. Her heartbeat was like the beating of a drum. Even Tai Butian could hear it clearly. "Senior sister, what's wrong?" Tai Butian asked worriedly. Young Ruolan turned a deaf ear to her. Suddenly, she asked in a hoarse voice, "His surname is Chu?" Tai Butian nodded doubtfully. She thought to herself, although this is a secret, didn't you know it long ago? "His name is Chu Yang." Young Ruolan asked. Yes, Tai Butian said. How old is he? She asked again. Should be 18 or 10? Tai Butian said uncertainly. How old is he? Young Ruolan's eyes widened. Yes, I heard that he is an abandoned child. And doesn't know his background. Tai Butian replied thoughtfully. Young Ruolan's throat issued an unknown moan. It seemed as if she had been struck by lightning. Her soft heart also seemed to have been pierced by a red-hot steel needle. She couldn't help but see stars. Her body swayed for a while before she finally managed to calm herself down. She realized that her face was already covered in tears. Abandoned child. Doesn't know his background. These two sentences made young Ruolan's entire body hurt. Her internal organs seemed to be churning, spasming, and hurting at this moment. She was in so much pain that her vision turned black, and she almost lost consciousness. His soul seemed to be floating around in a daze. He only heard his own voice asking, He's an abandoned child? Don't you know your background? Don't know my age? Tai Butian's voice seemed to float over from the clouds. He was adopted by his master when he was young. The Empress Wu Qianqian is his senior sister. I'm not too sure about his past. Empress Wu Qianqian is his senior sister? Young Ruolan felt as if she had gone through a treacherous journey. Her entire body was sweating profusely. She didn't have any strength left. In fact, she had exhausted all her strength just to sit on the edge of the bed. He had been adopted by his master since he was a young abandoned child. He didn't know his background. This child looked exactly like his father, as if he had been plucked from his father's face. Young Ruolan's soul floated in the air. Her eyes were lifeless. Only big drops of tears fell from her eyes. Tai Butian called her a few times, but she didn't hear her at all. Her soul had wandered off. His master. Young Ruolan finally thought of this question. This was undoubtedly an important clue. Young Ruolan was a little paranoid. Her intuition was wishful thinking. What's his master's sect? Beyond the Heavens sect. Who's his master? What's his name? I heard that his name is Meng Chaoran. He's the youngest junior brother of the Beyond the Heavens sect. Young Ruolan asked faster and faster. Tai Butian answered fluently. Now she also felt that something was wrong. She was a little scared and inexplicably flustered. She also had a vague intuition. This vague intuition made Tai Butian's face turn pale. Then it turned red. She answered young Ruolan's questions cautiously. It can't be. It can't be. It can't be so coincidental. Chu Yang is an abandoned child. I heard that senior sister and brother-in-law also lost their child 18 years ago. They haven't found him yet. Tai Butian also panicked. A feeling of shame welled up in her heart. It can't be. It can't be so coincidental, can it? Oh my God, if this is really the strong and wise monarch of a country, the unparalleled overlord who controlled the life and death of billions of people, the first emperor of an empire, suddenly panicked. In the panic, their eyes met unintentionally. In young Ruolan's eyes there was doubt, hope. In Tai Butian's eyes there was surprise, shyness, fear, uncertainty, and a little bit of vague understanding mixed with a thick sense of shame. You. Young Ruolan said in a daze. You. Tai Butian said in a daze. Both of them opened and closed their mouths at the same time. They were silent. They saw the complicated expressions on each other's faces. You first. You first. They spoke at the same time again. Then, they were silent at the same time. Cough, cough. Cough, cough. I heard that you. It was as if the two women were under a spell. They stood in the same place, opened and closed their mouths at the same time. Then, they said the same thing and just sat there in a daze. I'll go first. Young Ruolan sighed. Your brother-in-law. Suddenly, she found the word brother-in-law extremely awkward. Tai Butian's white jade-like face flushed red at once. It was as if a fire had suddenly ignited. She lowered her head deeply. Her heart started to beat wildly. Please don't be so coincidental. If my mother-in-law caught me red-handed. Tai Butian felt that if that was really the case, there would be a crack in the ground that she could immediately hide in. She would be embarrassed to death. Young Ruolan cleared her throat and said, 18 years ago, my child was lost in the lower three heavens. He hasn't been found until now. Tian, look at my appearance. Do you see any cough resemblance to your? Yang Ruolan coughed but looked at Tai Butian with eyes full of hope. Tai Butian moaned. Her whole body seemed to be on fire. She actually started to tremble. When she saw Chu failing just now, she felt that this brother-in-law looked very familiar. It was as if she had seen him somewhere before. Moreover, she felt very familiar with him. However, this was clearly the first time they had met. Besides, this was senior sister's man. But now that Yang Ruolan pointed it out, she finally understood who this brother-in-law resembled, Chu Yang. Like the person she yearned for day and night. A little. Tai Butian's voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. Just a little? Yang Ruolan asked, unwilling to give up. Yes, a little. Tai Butian covered her face and lowered her head. Her swan-like beautiful neck was exposed. However, it was already red with embarrassment. Yang Ruolan became excited at once. Then tell me more about him. The more detailed, the better. Tai Butian was dumbfounded. She looked at Yang Ruolan pitifully and stuttered. Senior sister. Senior? This pitiful emperor felt embarrassed for the first time. She was too ashamed to show her face. She turned her head and looked at her son. Suddenly she had a feeling. I can't wait to grab this little fellow and stuff him back into my belly. Under Yang Ruolan's hopeful and anxious gaze, Tai Butian's eyes were dull. She started to tell her story while stuttering. How did the two of you meet? What happened at that time? What did he say to you? How did the two of you have a child? One question after another came out like a cannonball. Tai Butian felt dizzy and lightheaded. She saw stars and was dazzled. This emperor, who could still remain calm in the face of tens of millions of soldiers, was now a living example of a stuttering patient. Furthermore, she was a stuttering patient who had committed a crime. She lowered her head and told the story one by one as if she was admitting her guilt. Yet the judge was very interested in all the facts of the crime. He kept going over and over again, not getting tired of it. He was determined to get every single detail out of her. By the time he asked the last question, Tai Butian almost had a feeling. Forget it if she fainted. I'm done. Are you done? Yang Ruolan sighed as if she hadn't had enough. Yes. Her Majesty's voice was like a mosquito's buzzing. That's all. Yes. He has suffered too much, poor child. Yang Ruolan's tears dripped down as she said this. Yang Ruolan obviously didn't dare to be completely sure. But she was vaguely certain in her heart. This king of Hell Chu is the real king of Hell Chu. The one she saw was definitely a fake. And there was an 80% chance that the real king of Hell Chu was her lost son. As for what happened before coming to Iron Cloud, you have to ask Wu Qianqian. She's in the palace now. Tai Butian said hesitantly. Quickly betray someone and share my burden. Sister, I really can't take it anymore. Yes. How could I forget her? That girl is his senior sister. Yang Ruolan stood up excitedly. Her face was flushed red as she said. I'll go and find her now. Yes, Senior, please do as you wish. Tai Butian felt that her tongue was no longer bent. She nodded and bowed as she said. Yes, you have a good rest. Yang Ruolan leaned over and looked at Tai Yang, who was sleeping soundly. Her gaze was completely different this time. I'll send you. Tai Butian hurriedly jumped up from the bed. She was attentive and careful to please her. Don't you just gave birth? You should rest well. Yang Ruolan hurriedly pressed her shoulder. She watched Yang Ruolan walk out with a whoosh. Tai Butian's face was red. She sat on the bed in a daze. She only felt that her whole body was alternating between hot and cold. After a long time, she suddenly moaned weakly and fell on the bed. She pulled the blanket over her head and covered herself with it. God, let me die. What will happen to this matter? Boo-hoo. What if it's true? What should I do? Chapter 587. MP Wu Qianqian sat quietly in her room. She hadn't slept for the past few days. My goal is in the heavens. This was what Chu Yang had said. So I want to go too. I won't let you see me, but I want to see you. To help you. Qianqian, when Tian is 1 month old, I will bring you back to the upper 3 heavens. There, I will recommend a great teacher to you. Your future is limitless. This was what Lan Meixian had said. Even a monarch or saint might be possible. Even a supreme martial artist would have to depend on your hard work. Don't let your talent go to waste. I won't let him down. The stronger I am, the more I can help him. You have to help me take a look at him. You have to help me help him. But don't let him know about Tai Yang. Tai Butian's voice sounded in her mind again. Wu Qianqian sighed. The two of them were really in the same boat. She still remembered the conversation she had with Tai Butian that day when Chu Yang had left. How many women in this world are willing to spend their whole lives with each other and grow old together? But until they die of old age, they have never truly given their feelings and love for each other. Although they have many children and grandchildren and are overflowing with kinship, true love is always in solitude. How many extraordinary men are there in this world? There are tens of billions of people and tens of billions of women in the heavens. How many of them are able to have a relationship with the man that they truly like and have truly conquered them? I've had enough. I'm content. I don't ask for anything else. If I force him to take responsibility, he will naturally take responsibility. But what's the point of taking responsibility like that? It's better to love one-sidedly. At least, I can still have some fantasies in my heart. Women all like strong men, especially strong men who are young and handsome, heroic and courageous. Which woman doesn't like them? Therefore, heroes are destined to be entangled in love and sin. But heroes may not be sentimental. Chu Yang is not a sentimental person. He's also not a playboy. He may look cunning and vicious, but deep down, he is a very upright person. The so-called cunning, wretched, hooligan and scheming are all his methods and not his character. Everything he says has a purpose. Even when he did some ridiculous things, it was still shocking when he revealed his true motive. This kind of man would not be pestered or moved by her. His heart is like a piece of iron. Wu Qianqian still remembered the look in Tai Butian's eyes when she said, his heart is like a piece of iron. It was so strange and complicated. And pride. If his heart could be easily changed, and he could be easily attracted by a beautiful woman, or even me, then would he still be Chu Yang? Will we still be in so much pain for him? Is a man who changes so easily worth our love? At that time, Wu Qianqian's last retort had left Tai Butian speechless for 3 days. Although there was no hope, although they didn't know, and although they had been tactfully rejected, the feelings of these two women towards Chu Yang didn't diminish in the slightest. She thought, pondered, deduced, and fantasized. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she laughed. I will go to the upper 3 heavens in a few days. Chu Yang will go to the upper 3 heavens sooner or later. So, I will wait for him in the upper 3 heavens. Wu Qianqian only woke up from her contemplation when she heard that Yang Ruolan had come to see her. She hurriedly received her. She was very suspicious. I don't know why Yang Ruolan is looking for me in the wee hours of the morning. Did something happen on Tai Butian's side? Wu Qianqian waited for Yang Ruolan to sit down before she cautiously asked, Senior, may I ask why you came in the wee hours of the night? It's nothing serious. Yang Ruolan's mood had calmed down. She still had desire, but she was inexplicably worried and fearful. Her intuition was the closest to King of Hell Chu this time. It was also the most hopeful. If it's not, she didn't know if she could withstand such a blow. Could she continue to muster the courage to search? I'm here to ask about your junior martial brother, the real King Hua of Chu. Yang Ruolan sorted out her thoughts and asked. Before he came to Iron Cloud, he was in the sect. If it's convenient for you, I would like to ask Miss Wu to talk with me. Chu Yang. Wu Qianqian's eyes lit up when she heard this name. Then she became suspicious. Why are you asking about Chu Yang? Yang Ruolan said. I don't have any other intentions. I don't have any evil intentions. I just want to know. Don't worry. Wu Qianqian nodded and said. I don't know what Senior wants to know. I didn't have much contact with Chu Yang when I was at Beyond the Heavens sect. Thinking about what Chu Yang had done in Beyond the Heavens sect, Wu Qianqian couldn't help but smile with her pair of crescent moon-like eyebrows. Then tell me what you know. Yang Ruolan looked at Wu Qianqian's expression and couldn't help but twitch the corners of her mouth. It seems this young King of Hell Chu has attracted a lot of love debts. This little Anai is obviously in love with him. I hadn't seen Chu Yang before 2 years ago. He used to be taciturn in the sect. He was somewhat dull. He didn't like to talk. He was the kind of person who would quickly vanish into the crowd. Wu Qianqian said while pondering. Oh, this opening was beyond Yang Ruolan's expectations. The future all-powerful king of Hell Chu was like this when he was young. Martial Uncle Meng of Purple Bamboo Garden was the most knowledgeable person in the older generation of Beyond the Heavens sect. He knew everything about the 3 sections. Moreover, he was the most indifferent and didn't care about anything. At that time, Father and the others evaluated Martial Uncle Meng's 3 younger brothers. They said that the eldest brother was mature and steady. He was resourceful. The second brother Chu Yang was taciturn. The third brother Tan Tan was the most unreliable person in Beyond the Heavens sect. Until that day, I followed Father's orders to go to Purple Bamboo Garden. Wu Qianqian's eyes flickered as she recalled the events of that day. I suddenly realized that this rumor was seriously untrue. The difference between the eldest brother Shi Qianshan and the second brother Chu Yang was like heaven and earth. Chu Yang's resourcefulness far surpassed Shi Qianshan's by more than 1-fold. Then why is he usually taciturn? The conflict between Chu Yang and Shi Qianshan was like a fight between 2 ants in the eyes of an emperor-level expert like Yang Ruolan. However, Yang Ruolan's heart surged as she listened. She couldn't help but ask. I think this may have something to do with his past. Wu Qianqian smiled and said, Chu Yang, he after all, thinks that he is an abandoned child. Since his heartless parents abandoned him, he knows about this matter. That's why he doesn't want to talk. Wu Qianqian smiled and said, in fact, this is human nature. It's not surprising. Generally speaking, a child with a pitiful past is always unwilling to talk. Chu Yang is smart and scheming. However, he is only a human after all. He is not a deity, so he must have a stone in his heart. Wu Qianqian explained with a smile. She explained for Chu Yang. I won't allow anyone to say anything bad about Chu Yang. However, she didn't expect that her words would be such a blow to Yang Ruolan. Yang Ruolan's face suddenly turned pale. Her eyes were also filled with tears. Heartless parents abandoned me. Stone in his heart. Heartless parents. Yang Ruolan's body swayed. Her eyes were lifeless. He must hate his parents, right? Yang Ruolan smiled bitterly. Wu Qianqian was immersed in her memories. She didn't realize it and said, of course. There was once when he came to Iron Cloud from overseas. We were in the same room dealing with affairs. We had nothing to do that day, so we talked about his past. What did he say? Yang Ruolan asked nervously. Wu Qianqian raised her head and looked at her in surprise. She seemed to be wondering why she was so nervous. She said, when we were returning from the streets, we saw too many parents putting straw signs on their children's heads. They sold their children in order to survive. At that time, I said that these children were pitiful. Then Chu Yang said something. What did he say? Yang Ruolan asked anxiously. Wu Qianqian raised her head and recalled Chu Yang's tone and expression. After a long time she said, at that time, Chu Yang said, these children aren't pitiful because they still have some value. At least they know that their parents were forced to sell them. Even if they left their parents, they still had to pay a price. So they knew and didn't resist. The most miserable ones were those who were thrown away like trash when they were just born. Those were the most miserable ones. They didn't have the least bit of value. They didn't even have the qualifications to be sold. When he said this, I knew that he must have thought of his past. So I didn't dare to say anything. Chu Yang sighed for a long time and asked me to buy all the children that day. Then, Butian Pavilion would pay for them and send them to school. That is the current Cloud Sky School. It would take in all the children who were forced to be sold. Even though Chu Yang has left, this work has never stopped. His Majesty and Butian Pavilion have been doing this all this time. Yang Ruolan did not hear what Wu Qianqian said after that. Her mind was buzzing, and she only replied with one sentence. The most pitiful ones are those who were thrown away like trash when they were just born. That is the most pitiful. They didn't have the least bit of value. They didn't even have the qualifications to be sold. These words echoed repeatedly. Yang Ruolan only felt that her heart had also shattered into pieces. Her spirit had also been crushed over and over again, and had turned into dust. When Chu Yang said this, what was he thinking? Did his heart hurt? Did he hate? When he said this, his heart was also broken, right? A wandering life with a very cold heart. When she was writing this chapter, she suddenly remembered a poem. Lu Yu's Chao Kuo. Youthful looks don't enter the field of youths, speechless only desolation. A wandering life with a very cold heart. At the end of the river, new poems and old dreams, lonely and resentful fragrance. Even if the spring breeze doesn't care, it also knows the Eastern Emperor. From that plum blossom's aloofness, I thought of our Chu Yang. Suddenly I felt some regret. So I composed a poem for our king of Hell Chu. How can a wandering life be described? I travel alone with a sword. A cold light is proud and aloof, piercing through the mountains and rivers. Seeing through the world of mortals cold and disdainful. What regrets do I have in this life? Chapter 588. Even if this wandering life could create an eternal legend, and could create an all-powerful king of Hell Chu, in the heart of a child, he still hoped that his parents would protect him from a young age. In the hearts of parents, wouldn't they rather give up such a legend to see their child grow up safely? Yang Ruolan's eyes were brimming with tears. Her heart was broken. I still remember the strange expression on Chu Yang's face when he said those words. Wu Qianhua tried her best to recall. She said, it was a kind of inferiority, resentment, self-pity, and a kind of disheartened heart. At that time I almost cried. Yang Ruolan also almost cried out. Poor child. At that time, I said that although your life was pitiful, your parents didn't expect that you would become an influential person when they abandoned you. If they knew, who knows how regretful they would be. Wu Qianqian's eyes were a little bleak. At that time, Chu Yang gritted his teeth and said, when I find them, if they really regret it and turn around to curry favor with me, I will kill them one by one. Wu Qianqian unconsciously imitated Chu Yang's tone when she said these words. The resentment in her tone was like dripping blood. Yang Ruolan trembled. She only felt a chill rising from the soles of her feet. It instantly spread throughout her body, and went straight to the top of her head. Yang Ruolan didn't remember the conversation after that. When she left, Yang Ruolan's mind became clear for a while. She asked, Qianqian, you grew up with him. Did you find that he had a purple jade pendant? Wu Qianqian didn't even think this time. She said, no. At least I didn't see it. Then she understood something. She was somewhat flabbergasted. She said, Elder, are you suspecting that Chu Yang is your missing child? This, Yang Ruolan left dejectedly. Her feet were high, and her feet were low. It was as if she was sleepwalking. When she asked about the purple jade pendant, Wu Qianqian didn't even think about it. These two words gave her a heavy blow. In terms of understanding of Chu Yang, no one could compare to Wu Qianqian. But Wu Qianqian said no. Isn't it? Isn't it? Yang Ruolan walked out. She faced the night wind. Her heart was in a mess. Suddenly, he felt that this matter was full of fog. After a long while, she began to comb her hair carefully. The king of Hell Chu I saw wasn't the king of Hell Chu of the lower three heavens. The king of Hell Chu looked exactly like his son. And Tai Butian said that the king of Hell Chu looked exactly like her husband. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. He recalled Chu Feiling's words. My sworn younger brother looks very similar to me. Yang Ruolan's body trembled. She suddenly stood still. She remembered that she had doubted him and said, he's only known you for 2 days. Why would he give you so many good things? Could it be a ploy? Or do they have any ulterior motives? Yang Ruolan suddenly burst into tears as she recalled the conversation between the husband and wife. Could it be him? Could it be that he found out about her identity at that time? So he gave her husband so many good things? And he even gave me a sword. After all, even if they were sworn brothers, they wouldn't be so generous after only 2 days of contact, right? It should be known that those things were more precious than heavenly treasures. Each of them could change a person's fate. But if it was really him, why didn't he admit it? Since he had given so many things, it meant that there was no hatred in his heart. Why didn't he admit it? Yang Ruolan's heart was in extreme pain. She suddenly squatted down, covered her face with her hands, and burst into tears. Yang Ruolan finally returned to her residence at dawn. She woke up Chu Feiling, who was snoring. She didn't say anything, and used a wet and cold towel to wipe her husband's face. Chu Feiling immediately opened his eyes with vigor. He angrily said, "What are you doing?" Quickly, Yang Ruolan's expression was very strange. She said with some fear and trepidation, Do you still remember your sworn younger brother? You told me about him?" "Of course I remember my brother," Chu Feiling said inexplicably. "What does your sworn younger brother look like? What did you talk about when you were together? Tell me everything in detail," Yang Ruolan urged. She hadn't slept for a night, but she was still full of energy. Her eyes were shining when she asked this question. Her mouth was moving up and down. She was obviously very moved. Chu Feiling was stunned. It had been so long. How could she still remember? Why did his wife suddenly ask about this matter at this time? "Tell me quickly, what kind of person is your sworn younger brother?" Yang Ruolan bit her lips when she said the word sworn younger brother. She sighed heavily. She had a feeling in her heart. If it's true, then my husband has really made a big joke of himself this time. Well, my sworn younger brother is naturally very handsome and confident. Chu Feiling's spirit was lifted. He smiled easily and said, "That guy is young, but he's really a rare talent. He's courageous and knowledgeable. He's brave and resourceful. He's the first young hero I've ever seen. None of the young talents of the big clans of the upper three heavens can compare to him." Chu Feiling felt that something was wrong as he spoke. Why is my wife's expression so strange today? In the past, Yang Ruolan would listen to him with a smile when he talked about this matter, but she would be more or less perfunctory. After all, she hadn't seen him in person. But today was different. Yang Ruolan had a satisfied smile on her lips. She didn't seem to get tired of hearing him boast about his sworn brother, especially when she heard those exaggerated adjectives. Her eyes were shining when she heard them. It seemed that even if he said more, it would be fine. I'm willing to listen to such an expression. Moreover, she looked very proud, very proud. Are you done? Yang Ruolan asked. Is that all? Chu Feiling felt dizzy. He stretched out his hand to touch his wife's forehead. Are you okay today? Yang Ruolan slapped his hand away and said, Is there more? No. No. Yang Ruolan's eyes showed signs of anger. You and your sworn younger brother traveled together for several days. You faced life and death together, and killed strong enemies together. Your sworn younger brother also gave you so many good things. You've been friends for such a long time. Why didn't you talk normally? Talk? Chu Feiling was confused. What talk? It's the conversation between the two of you. What did you say? What did you talk about? What did he say? Didn't he say anything about his facial expressions? Yang Ruolan asked while clenching her teeth. Oh my God. Chu Feiling jumped up. How can I remember all of this? So much time has passed. Even a deity can't remember, right? Besides, what's the point of investigating this? My sworn younger brother is really a man. You must remember something, right? Who asked you if he was a man or a woman? Do you think that I have the leisure to be jealous of you at this time? Yang Ruolan's eyes became dangerous. Don't tell me that you've forgotten everything. He was such a good kid. His kindness to you was as high as the sky, and as deep as the earth. How can you forget everything? I think. Chu Feiling raised his hands in surrender. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What a good kid. What kid? He's my sworn brother. You can't say that even if you're my sister-in-law. You've messed up the seniority. What a scandal. But how could he dare to say these words in front of his wife? Let me remind you. Yang Ruolan saw that her husband was being perfunctory. So she said, Was your sworn younger brother ecstatic when you became sworn brothers? Or, did you coincide with each other? No way. Chu Feiling immediately recalled. That little boy seemed to have suffered a great shock at that time. He stuttered a little. Haha. Speaking of which, I was a little presumptuous when I brought it up. No wonder he couldn't accept it. How much of a shock? Stuttering? You're a pighead. Yang Ruolan fiercely scolded him in her heart. Then she hurriedly asked, Do you remember the situation at that time? Of course. Chu Feiling smiled and said, At that time I said, It's rare that you and I hit it off so well. Why don't we become sworn brothers? Then that little brother was stunned. Ha ha ha. That guy actually said that I was a big shot. Then I said, "Are you looking down on me?" Ha ha ha. So he didn't know what to do. Then Chu Feiling spoke and gestured, and recounted the scene at that time. This matter had left a deep impression in his heart. Moreover, he had half-forced himself to become sworn brothers with that guy. So how could he forget? That's it. I almost pressed him down to kowtow. That guy looked as if he was in a dream, even after he finished kowtowing. His face was also very ugly. No, it was a very pleasantly surprised expression. Yes, yes, yes. Chu Feiling recalled how his sworn brother had looked when he had lost his soul. So, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yang Ruolan held her forehead with one hand. She sighed deeply in her heart. Ugly face. Lost his soul. He was forced by his own father to become sworn brothers with his own father. How can he look good? You would have fainted if you were in his place. No, no, no. You would have already fainted. Yang Ruolan could have killed herself if she hadn't been sure that this was her son after hearing this. She couldn't help but look at her husband with some pity in her eyes. This poor guy is still in a dream, but he's saying that others are dreaming. And then? Yang Ruolan asked. You must have had a lot to say after becoming sworn brothers, right? Yes. Chu Feiling sighed. You also know that the matter of that year has been pressing down on my heart like a mountain. It's making it hard for me to breathe. I don't dare to talk about it in front of my father-in-law, or in my own home. Especially in front of you. I had a belly full of bitterness that day. So I naturally had to tell my brother about that day. We talked about that snowy night 18 years ago. It's also the thing that we regret our entire lives. Chapter 589. Chu Feiling was stunned. He stuttered. I said why? Can I say it? Who said I can't? Yang Ruolan glared at him. Why are you so stupid? What's next? What next? Chu Feiling was really confused today. He was about to break down. Wife, what are you talking about? You're very strange today. I'm going crazy. Yang Ruolan glared at him frantically. She was fuming. This bastard. He actually started to interrupt when we were talking about the most important part. Do you know that I'm burning with anxiety now? She looked up at the sky speechlessly and muttered. I'm really strange now. Why did I marry you in the first place? Chu Feiling's expression turned gloomy. He let out a long sigh and said sadly, You're right. If you hadn't married me back then, your life would have been much happier than it is now. Speaking of which, I've implicated you. It's all because of the internal strife of my Chu clan that you've suffered for so many years. Yang Ruolan's eyes turned white. She slumped down on the bed. She was extremely speechless. She wanted to cry, but had no tears to shed. She pleaded, Damn it. I asked you to continue. Go on. Chu Feiling felt a wave of depression rise from his heart. He muttered in his heart. I've never seen anyone being addicted to listening to their self-reflection. But this matter is really a disaster for my clan. So he had no choice but to continue the examination with a bitter face. For so many years, if it wasn't for our Chu clan, you would be so happy now. Roland, marrying me is really hard on you. Chu Feiling's last sentence was filled with sincerity and emotion. In these 18 years, every time Yang Ruolan was in a bad mood because she missed her son, Chu Feiling would reflect on himself when he had no other choice. He would talk until he was in tears. Yang Ruolan's sadness would disappear without a trace, and she would comfort him instead. This trick worked every time. It had become a routine in these 18 years. Chu Feiling had practiced self-reflection to the point where he could speak eloquently in order to coax his wife. But this trick obviously didn't work today. Yang Ruolan jumped up and strangled Chu Feiling's neck. You pig! Are you trying to anger me to death? You've been using this trick to coax me for 18 years. I'm afraid of hurting you, so I've been feigning civility every time. Now, you're actually using the same trick again. You. Do you really want to anger me to death? Yang Ruolan was furious. This pig, does he even know what he's saying? Chu Feiling was completely stunned. So his trick had been seen through long ago? He couldn't help but feel embarrassed as he said, Wife, you're so good. You haven't exposed me for so many years. How did she expose me today? Go on. Young Ruolan was infuriated by him. Her heart felt as if 25 kittens had drilled into it, and 100 claws were scratching at it. Haven't you been listening to it for 18 years? Chu Feiling was so depressed that he wanted to die. You just said that you were going to die from anger. What do you want me to do? Young Ruolan looked at her husband's aggrieved and gloomy face. So, she hammered her head against the quilt in a dejected manner. She resisted the urge to vomit blood. Then, she used an extremely gentle voice to guide him patiently. Didn't you just say that you and your sworn brother had a long talk after you became sworn brothers? Am I right? Yes. Chu Feiling nodded earnestly. Then can you continue to speak? Go on. Tell me what you two talked about, okay? Young Ruolan looked at him with eyes that seemed to be spitting fire. She was so angry that her chest was about to explode. Then she suddenly roared. Okay? There was a buzzing sound, and the guards and palace maids in the vicinity of the palace rolled their eyes at the same time. They had fainted because of this roar. How could these people bear the roar of an emperor-level expert? Chu Feiling was the first to bear the brunt of it. He also felt as if a bell and a drum were ringing in his ears for a while. Then he came to his senses and said with a bitter smile, So this is it. I thought. Speak quickly. Young Ruolan interrupted him without any trace of politeness. Then she sat upright and still. Her body was slightly bent forward, and she assumed an extremely serious posture of listening. This gave Chu Feiling a fright. It was like this at that time. I talked about the regretful things of the past, and my heart was filled with endless sadness. I had no choice but to praise my sworn younger brother when I said this. He actually felt the same way as me at that time. In fact, he even cried with me. He's such a pure and innocent young man. Chu Feiling sighed with emotion. He was able to empathize with other people's experiences to such an extent. This is enough to show how kind-hearted my sworn younger brother is. The corner of young Ruolan's mouth twitched. She thought, You're talking about his personal experiences that he doesn't know about. How can he not cry? And you're still praising him for being kind-hearted? You're going too far from the truth. She wanted to laugh when she thought of this, but she sighed deeply in an instant. Then, she thought of another matter, and her heart suddenly throbbed with pain. She felt extremely sour. My sworn younger brother cried with me. It turns out that my poor child also cried at that time. I turned around after I finished speaking, and saw that my sworn younger brother's face was full of tears. He was sobbing. I was startled at that time. A warm smile appeared on Chu Feiling's face as he said, My sworn younger brother cried and said that he was very moved. Young Ruolan turned her face away. She gnashed her teeth, and her face became somewhat distorted. She thought, I was very moved. I was so moved that I wanted to strangle you to death. Did he give you a gift before you became sworn brothers? Or after you became sworn brothers? Young Ruolan sighed and asked this question that she was very concerned about. My sworn younger brother gave me a gift after we became sworn brothers. Chu Feiling recalled the scene of that day, and became fascinated. He said with a smile, My sworn younger brother is really a good person. It's settled. It's definitely him. Young Ruolan's eyes flowed with tears, but a sweet smile bloomed at the corners of her mouth. She felt as if a big stone had been lifted from her heart. How is your sworn younger brother a good person? Chu Feiling's face was brimming with gratitude. He affectionately said, Before we became sworn brothers, I had told him that his sister-in-law, that is you, had a problem with chest pain. Then, he immediately took out an elixir and asked me to treat your chest pain. That was a heavenly elixir. Young Ruolan only felt a warm current flowing through her heart. Her whole body had never felt so comfortable before. Her chest felt warm, and the blood in her body seemed to be flowing rapidly. She couldn't help but shed 2 drops of happy tears. She thought in a daze, So my illness was cured by my sworn brother because he missed me, his mother. Her heart felt sour, sweet, bitter, and tired in an instant. She wanted to cry out loud, and cry until she was hovering between life and death. Then my sworn younger brother asked about my cultivation. Then, he gave me 2 exceptional elixirs that were even better than those elixirs. They were elixirs that could help us advance by a big realm. And he especially told me that you and my sister-in-law should each have one. My sworn younger brother seriously told me these words for a long time. He also told me to take one on the spot. He guarded me, and I advanced smoothly, Chu Feiling said with satisfaction. My sworn brother was afraid that our strength was too weak, and we would get killed if we weren't careful. So, he gave it to us. These 2 elixirs were my sworn brother's filial piety. Sister-in-law. Yang Ruolan finally reacted. She looked at Chu Feiling with eyes that seemed as if they were about to spew fire. Ah. Chu Feiling was confused. He looked at her in astonishment. What's wrong? Yang Ruolan stared at him for a long time. It seemed as if she wanted to eat him alive. Then she waved her hand weakly. It's nothing. You can continue. You're very strange today. So strange that it's inexplicable. Chu Feiling muttered. Then my sworn younger brother saw that my saber was damaged in the battle. So he simply gave me another saber. Then he gave me a sword. He said that it was for Madam. It was for you. I even reprimanded him at that time. Reprimanded him? Yang Ruolan's beautiful eyes opened wide. Why? He stuttered at that time. He said that it was for Madam. Chu Feiling shook his head and laughed. He calmly said, Humph. He and I have already become sworn brothers. So how can he still call you Madam? He should have called you sister-in-law. So, I sternly reprimanded him. I reprimanded him until he was sweating profusely. As an elder brother, he needs to act like one. Yang Ruolan opened her mouth wide. She looked at him in shock. It seemed as if she was looking at a non-human. You're really something. He doesn't dare to call you that. But you force him to change it. And you still act so dignified. At this moment, Yang Ruolan looked at Chu Feiling with a gaze full of admiration. He's worthy of worship. I'm afraid that you're the only one in the whole world who has become sworn brothers with your own son. No, not only in the whole world, but also in the whole world since ancient times. It's absolutely unprecedented. You're awesome. Yang Ruolan raised her thumb and stuck it under Chu Feiling's nose. You're awesome. Yang Ruolan's heart was filled with happiness and satisfaction at this moment. She knew that her son had unknowingly given her so many good things. Each of them was ingenious. Yang Ruolan's heart was overflowing with happiness. So she was in the mood to joke with Chu Feiling. That's natural, Chu Feiling solemnly said. My sworn younger brother is a genius. But he still has to show some seniority in front of me. Don't flatter yourself. Go on. A sweet smile hung on Yang Ruolan's face. Chu Feiling's eyes widened as he looked at her. And his heart almost skipped a beat. So, he hastily restrained his mind and continued to speak. Then, my sworn younger brother gave us 2 bottles of medicine that can conceal our aura. He said that it can make others unable to see our true strength. Chu Feiling sighed. He was somewhat ashamed. I was too ashamed to show my face at that time. My sworn younger brother gave us so many treasures in addition to the mysterious Yang Jade core. So, I immediately took my leave. My sworn younger brother is kind-hearted. He comforted me before he left. He even praised our son. Chu Feiling repeatedly shook his head. He was obviously very satisfied with his sworn younger brother. He praised our son? Yang Ruolan's small mouth was half open. She was dumbstruck. I'm very ashamed. Cough cough. I felt that the suspense I left behind yesterday's update was somewhat unkind. Cough cough cough. So I worked overtime all night. I wrote a chapter until 3:30 in the morning. Then I couldn't take it anymore. So I went to sleep. I'll explode today. I'll ask for monthly votes first. The monthly votes are being chased very tightly. I need your help. Please don't blame me for urging you to get your recommendation votes. But our recommendation votes are too few. The new books in the same period have more than 1 million recommendation votes. And we haven't even passed 500,000. I feel inferior. I want to break through 500,000 recommendation votes this week. Please help me. Chapter 590. Yes, he comforted me at that time. He said that our son will be found. Maybe he is already a young hero. Chu Feiling chuckled and said, I said at that time. I said that I would be satisfied if Xiao Quan could be 1/10 or 2/10 of my sworn brother. My sworn brother immediately comforted me, saying that our son must be very promising. Moreover, he's handsome, confident and elegant. He's young and promising, and has a demeanor and temperament. Young ladies will be dizzy and disoriented when they see him. Chu Feiling smiled and said, I knew that he was comforting me. But it is strange that my mental illness has improved a lot after that time. Yang Ruolan opened her eyes wide. She opened her small mouth. She was petrified on the spot. Her eyebrows twitched for a long time. The corners of her mouth twitched. Then, the look in her eyes became even more strange. She finally came to her senses. She looked at her husband as if she was looking at an immortal. She couldn't help but smile. Your son must be very promising? Yes, he must be very promising. He turned the entire lower three heavens around by himself. If this isn't promising, then what is? Your son must be handsome, confident and elegant, right? He is young and promising. He also has a demeanor and temperament. This point should not be wrong. Young ladies will be dizzy and disoriented when they see him? I absolutely believe this. Just look at Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian. These two girls are from Tianxiang. The empress had willingly given birth to a child for him. If that wasn't enough to make her dizzy, then what was? It's just that these words coming from his own mouth are a little too funny, right? The smile on Yang Ruolan's face gradually spread. It gradually spread to her entire face. She laughed silently. Even if it's all true, there's still one more thing to add. Your son's skin is also extraordinarily thick. Your sworn brother is very interesting. Yang Ruolan looked at her husband with a faint smile. That little one is indeed not bad. Chu Feiling felt honored when his sworn brother was praised. So, he happily replied, Feiling, there is something. I think I have to tell you. Yang Ruolan let out a long sigh. What is it? Yes, our son was lost 18 years and months ago. Yang Ruolan said slowly. Chu Feiling sighed. This matter is really worrying. Yang Ruolan ignored him and said, It is said that King of Helchu was an abandoned child. 18 years ago, King of Helchu's master, Meng Chaoran, picked him up. Chu Feiling's eyes widened. You also know that Her Majesty the Empress of the Imperial Palace, my junior martial sister, has just given birth to a child. And that child belongs to King of Helchu. Yang Ruolan slowly said. That child's appearance is said to be exactly the same as King of Helchu's. And junior sister said that King of Helchu's appearance is 80% similar to yours. Chu Feiling opened his mouth wide. From this, I can conclude that the King of Helchu I found the last time was a fake. And I haven't even seen the real King of Helchu. Yang Ruolan snorted. Chu Feiling's face darkened. The sworn brother you met in Shangan is also surnamed Chu, and his name is also Chu Yang. He has the same name as King of Helchu. Yang Ruolan said slowly. Hey! Chu Feiling's face turned green. So, we can conclude that your sworn brother is King of Helchu. Yang Ruolan pressed on. Yes. Cold sweat seeped out of Chu Feiling's forehead. You said that you and your sworn brother are fated to meet. His appearance is 80% similar to yours. Yang Ruolan looked at her husband fiercely. Chu Feiling's whole body became hot. He felt that his vision was a little blurry, and his mind was a little muddled. You and your sworn brother became friends for 2 days. And he gave you the mysterious Yang Jade Core and a rare elixir. He also gave you 2 divine weapons, which are rare even in the entire heavens. Moreover, your sworn brother still remembers every word you said. He also remembers your wife's illness. And he doesn't forget to give your wife a share of the good things he gives you. But you and your second brother, who was born from the same mother, grew up naked together, and only wanted to kill you. Your sworn brother gave you so much in 2 days. He gave it all to you as if he was moving house. And he was afraid that you wouldn't want it. I find it strange. Why didn't he give it to anyone else apart from you and me? Chu Feiling's face turned black and green. He should dig a hole and bury himself if he couldn't understand what Yang Ruolan was implying. Your sworn brother is shrewd and resourceful. He's the #1 person of the younger generation. He's ruthless and decisive. But he's so devoted to a person he met by chance. Is this possible? If he was really so careless, who knows how many times he would have died by now? How could he be worthy of your praise? Doesn't he know that an ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin? Even the best of brothers can't help but be tempted by their own interests, right? What's more, he took out all the peerless treasures. Wasn't he worried that you'd snatch them from him? Did you kill him? How could he trust you so much? And your sworn brother is so witty and resourceful. Why did he cry after you told him a story? Why are his feelings so fragile? It's only been 2 days. And your brother's feelings haven't even been tested. And he gave you everything. Yang Ruolan became angrier as she spoke. Chu Feiling, are you a pig? Chu Feiling was sweating profusely. He was in an extremely sorry state. Even his eyebrows were covered with sparkling and translucent beads of sweat. The beads of sweat dripped down his eyelashes and into his open mouth. But he didn't seem to feel anything. You mean he's our son? Chu Feiling muttered. What do you think? Yang Ruolan glared at him with hatred. Oh my God! Chu Feiling sat on the ground, and his face immediately turned as red as a pig's liver. His whole body was sweating profusely. He was so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. Well, it wasn't a possibility. It was a fact. I really admire you. You've been looking for your son for 18 years. You've been so anxious. Now that you've finally met him, you've become sworn brothers with him. Moreover, your son isn't willing. But as an old woman, you actually forced your son to become sworn brothers with you. You even pressed your son's head down and made him kowtow to you. Yang Ruolan shook her head and sighed. Chu Feiling, I really admire you. How heartless must you be to do such a thing? Becoming sworn brothers with your own son. Forcing your son to call you big brother. And forcing your son to call his mother sister-in-law. Chu Feiling, my dear husband, you're the only one in the entire heavenly layer. As Yang Ruolan continued to reprimand him, even she found it a little funny. Chu Feiling opened his eyes in a daze. His face turned ghastly pale. And then it turned into a pig's liver. Then it turned into a wretched green color. His face was like a dragon. Finally he covered his face. He groaned and fell to the ground. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's so embarrassing. Such a joke. Chu Feiling felt that he would laugh himself to death if it happened to someone else. But it happened to him. This was the most embarrassing thing in the world. Finally, that little bastard. That bastard. Why didn't he say? Chu Feiling jumped up. He was furious and his face was ferocious. He made me such a big joke. I'm afraid it's not that he didn't say it, but that you didn't give him a chance. Yang Ruolan said lightly. Chu Feiling recalled the scene at that time and muttered to himself regretfully. No wonder. No wonder he hesitated several times, but was forced by me to become sworn brothers without stopping for a moment. Yang Ruolan was furious when she heard this. She pinched his ear hard. You still have the face to say it? If you gave him a chance to speak, I'm afraid my son would have returned home long ago. It's all your fault. You pig. Yang Ruolan's heart was bleeding when she thought of how she should have reunited with her son long ago. She should have been muddle-headed and delayed for such a long time. Don't you know that my son hasn't returned home for 18 years? I haven't even seen my own son as his mother. You stupid pig, you actually said. Even if he became sworn brothers, he should have said it. How important is it to acknowledge one's ancestors? Chu Feiling's face turned red as he shouted. But he stopped halfway. His voice became softer and softer. He became more and more guilty and lacked confidence. Yang Ruolan was furious. Bastard. You've already cut the Gordian knot and become sworn brothers with him. How would he dare to say it? Won't you skin him alive if he says it? Chu Feiling said one word. Then he couldn't continue. He let out a long sigh of regret. He hugged his head and pulled his hair. Then he squatted down. He didn't say anything. Yang Ruolan was speechless. Both husband and wife were silent. Ruolan, this can't be spread out. Chu Feiling suddenly remembered. He hurriedly grabbed his wife's hand and begged. If you say it out, I'll die. Yang Ruolan was angry and amused at the same time. She shook off his hand. Do you think this can be hidden? At least you can't hide it from father, right? Chu Feiling was like a deflated balloon. Master is born with a big mouth. If he knows, it means that the Chu clan knows. If the Chu clan knows, it means that the Yang clan knows as well. That means that the upper three heavens knows. I don't want to live anymore. Yang Ruolan was still angry. Chu Feiling lost his temper and was stunned for a while. Then, he gritted his teeth and said, "When that little bastard returns, if I don't spank his ass into 8 pieces, You'll what? You'll what?" Yang Ruolan sneered. She looked at him and asked, "You'll what?" "Let me tell you, Chu Feiling. When my son comes back, we owe him 18 years. 18 years. If you dare to lay a finger on him, I'll fight you to the death." Chu Feiling was completely defeated. He fell to the ground and said weakly, I'm just saying. You can't even say it." Yang Ruolan shouted. Chapter 591. Do I need you to tell me that? Yang Ruolan rolled her eyes at him. She snorted coldly, but a happy and satisfied smile had already appeared on her face. Chu Feiling immediately stood up and forgot about his embarrassing incident. He walked around excitedly. "So, I have a grandson? Our Chu clan has another descendant? Ha ha ha. This is really double happiness." He rubbed his hands and was somewhat impatient. "Oh yes, my grandson. I haven't seen him carefully this. Ruolan, let's go to junior sister now." No, can I still call her junior sister?" "Do you want to call her sister-in-law?" Yang Ruolan asked teasingly. Chu Feiling's old face suddenly turned red. He was so embarrassed that he didn't know what to do. He begged, "Can you not mention this matter?" "Humph." Yang Ruolan snorted coldly. She frowned and said, "It seems that there's no big problem if you want to acknowledge your son. But if you want to acknowledge your grandson, it's very difficult. You still need to consider. This matter can't be rushed." "Huh? Why?" Chu Feiling wondered. "Why? Isn't it because of your good son? He doesn't even have a status now. He doesn't even know that she's a woman. How much has she endured? She's a dignified supreme emperor, and she's still a virgin. She even gave birth to his child without a word." Yang Ruolan sighed and was somewhat melancholy. "And this child's status has been confirmed since he was born. The emperor of the empire, the only heir of Iron Cloud. How can we? But even if he's the emperor, he still has to acknowledge his ancestors, right?" Chu Feiling was dumbfounded. "My grandson can't always be surnamed Iron, right? The point is, my junior sister doesn't want to acknowledge this relative." Yang Ruolan sighed helplessly. She doesn't want Chu Yang to know. She sacrificed her chastity and her future to save your son's life. She gave birth to your son's child. How can you snatch her heart away like this?" Chu Feiling blurted out. "Won't it be fine if you let my son marry her? Your son still doesn't know that she's a woman. Even if your son is willing to marry her, she may not be willing to marry him." Yang Ruolan had seen through everything. She sighed. "Besides, she's the Iron Cloud Emperor's only successor. If she were to marry, what would she do with such a huge empire? This is a responsibility. If it were you, would you be able to abandon it?" Chu Feiling lowered his head and said in despair, "Are we just going to watch as my son, surnamed Tai?" Yang Ruolan frowned and said, "These matters must be dealt with step by step. You mustn't be too hasty. Otherwise it'll backfire and we'll be done for." Yes. Chu Feiling could only suppress his emotions. Both husband and wife were thinking about something. But before they could look for Tai Butian came looking for them herself. Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolan sat in their chairs and looked at Tai Butian, who was sitting opposite them. "Senior sister, I'm sorry for being so presumptuous. You won't be surprised, right?" Tai Butian's expression was indifferent as she sat down leisurely. Then, she slowly raised her head and looked at Yang Ruolan calmly. Her expression was natural and calm, displaying the demeanor of an emperor. The fluster and shyness from last night, as well as her ladylike demeanor, were nowhere to be seen. Yang Ruolan's heart sank. The moment Tai Butian called her senior sister, Yang Ruolan felt something in her heart. Seeing her calm and composed demeanor, Yang Ruolan knew what she was going to say almost without Tai Butian saying anything. "Junior sister, what's the matter?" Yang Ruolan stammered. "Yes, I've specially come to report something to senior sister." Tai Butian smiled calmly and said, "Tai Yang is my son. I'm Tai Yang's father. This is the first thing. The second thing is that I don't want Chu Yang to know about this. Perhaps senior sister still doesn't know that not only does Chu Yang not know that I'm a girl, but there's also a girl in Chu Yang's heart whom he loves wholeheartedly. Yang Rulan's eyes widened. Ha! Tai Butian continued. For her, for the woman in his heart, Chu Yang has never shown his true appearance to anyone in Iron Cloud. Wu Qianqian's beauty can be said to be unparalleled in the world. I'm confident that even among the daughters of the aristocratic families in the upper three heavens, there are only a handful who can compare to Wu Qianqian's beauty. Tai Butian said lightly. And Chu Yang is with her all the time. Wu Qianqian is deeply in love with him, but Chu Yang has never made any promises. Or rather, he's never been tempted at all. She smiled slightly and said, if Chu Yang knows about Tai Yang's existence, he'll definitely be very conflicted. And it's very likely that he'll create a tragedy. To me, to Chu Yang, and to the woman in Chu Yang's heart, it'll be a tragedy. In serious cases, it can even ruin a lifetime of happiness. Because Chu Yang is too responsible a man. Although he looks cunning on the surface, the righteousness and persistence in his heart are unimaginable. And I can feel that his feelings for the woman he loves have already surpassed life and death. He's already disregarding everything. And I don't want such a tragedy to happen. So, I don't want Chu Yang to know. Whether it's for myself, for Chu Yang, for that innocent woman, or even for the Chu clan. Chu Yang can't know about it. Tai Butian sat upright. Her slender figure was calm and steady. She said softly, so please give me your blessings. Without waiting for Chu Failing and his wife to reply, she hurriedly continued. I can allow, and even welcome, you to visit Tai Yang often. You can even stay here every day. You can even take on the surname Chu. But in the lower three heavens in Iron Cloud, he can only be called Tai Yang. He's from Iron Cloud. My only request is that you don't let Chu Yang know. I only ask you to promise me this one thing. That's all I've said. Senior sister, please consider it carefully. I'll take my leave now. Tai Butian smiled and stood up. She bowed deeply and walked out. She left in a carefree and decisive manner. Her fluttering figure disappeared outside the door. Yang Rulan and Chu Failing were dumbfounded. They looked at each other. Tai Butian, this woman's persistence and perseverance were simply shocking. Her independence and stubbornness were something that the couple had never seen before in their lives. What should we do? Yang Rulan slumped weakly on the chair. What should we do? Chu Failing sighed deeply. When our grandson is 1 month old, we'll immediately go to the lower three heavens to look for him. But this matter. Yang Rulan said despondently. Should we tell him or not? Let's take it one step at a time. Chu Failing sighed again. The couple sat opposite each other, and sighed one after another. It was as if they had sighed all the sighs they could today. Tai Butian's words had already blocked all of their paths of hope, and all of their paths. Blocked all of them. Her words were very obvious. If you insist that this is your child, I'll admit it. You can visit him at any time. You can even stay here. Even if the entire Chu clan comes to see this child, I'm willing. But my only request is that you don't tell Chu Yang. Tai Butian slowly returned to her bedroom. She had just sat down when her face suddenly flushed red. Then, a mouthful of fresh blood suddenly flowed out from the corner of her lips. She took out a pure white silk handkerchief and covered her mouth. She coughed slightly. A large patch of blood immediately appeared on the silk handkerchief. Then, as if she had lost all her strength, she sat down on her throne. After a long time, she got up gently and walked to the side of the bed. The baby on the bed seemed to have sensed his mother's arrival. He started to struggle and dance. A cute smile appeared on his face, as if he longed for his mother's embrace. Tai Butian looked at him. Her gaze gradually became as gentle as spring water. She reached out her hands lovingly and carefully held her son in her arms. She looked at this tender face in a daze. The baby babbled, as if he was hungry. Tai Butian laughed softly. Little fellow, you only know how to eat. She unbuttoned her clothes and carefully placed her nipples on the baby's mouth. Tai Yang immediately opened his little mouth and started to swallow in big mouthfuls. He looked at his mother with his black eyes as he ate. His little face was full of happiness. Tai Butian's heart was instantly filled with pure maternal love. After a long time, she lifted her gaze from her son's face. She looked somewhat despondently at the void and muttered, "I love you. But how can I destroy your happiness?" Her voice was faint and faint. It seemed to have melted in the wind as it left her lips. Then, it turned into a sigh. 3 days. During this period of time, it was like a raging fire. Motianji took advantage of the destruction of the Meng clan to spread the news. Countless terrifying rumors flew out from the Mo clan, Dong clan, and other big clans. For example, Ao Yin has died in the hands of the O clan, Black Devil clan, and other clans. Even his bones are not left behind. These clans were ambitious. They wanted to destroy the Ao clan and replace it. The Jianghu was in chaos. The 3 days were in chaos. At the same time, the invisible falcons of the Xie clan were also coming and going. They were sending messages to the Ji clan, Mo clan, Dong clan, Luo clan, and Gu clan. Chuyang had returned. Dong Wushang, Luo Kudi Gmo, and the others had returned. And they were now at the Xie clan. Ao Yin had been rescued by Chuyang and the others. He had also returned to the Ao clan. Chuyang first passed this news to Motianji. While waiting, Chuyang said to Ao Yin, "The news of your survival. I think it's better not to leak out for the time being. Just spread the news that the big clans are hunting you down. That's good enough." Ao Yin nodded deeply. "I also think so. The Ao clan has been too comfortable these years. They also need to see blood to sharpen themselves. If the clan knows that I've returned safely, I'm afraid that countless elders of the Ao clan will cancel their revenge plans." He frowned. "Moreover, these clans have become malignant tumors of the 3 heavens. They must be eliminated." Chuyang nodded. No one knew that Ao Yin had followed them back to the Xie clan. Chuyang had concealed this news from the beginning. In this regard, he and Motianji's plan was undoubtedly the same. Sure enough, the invisible falcon flew over a few days later. It brought an extremely urgent news from Motianji. Duke Xia's safety must not be leaked. The handwriting was very messy. It could be seen that Motianji had hurriedly written these words the moment he had received the news. And he had immediately sent it out. Chuyang was absolutely sure that this invisible falcon wouldn't stay in Motianji's hands for more than a breath. Third update. Requesting recommendation votes. Brothers and sisters, yesterday's recommendation votes were 7,000. Today, it's less than 3,500. Chapter 592. Great minds think alike. Chuyang faintly smiled. Then he began to ponder. The Xie clan's clan lord, Xie Guang'an, sat opposite him. His complexion was heavy as he said, "The entire 3 heavens have become a pot of paste. They're ready to strike at any time. But Motianji has seriously requested that our clans mustn't make the first move." He sighed and said, "This is somewhat torturous. We can't do anything apart from listening to the news every day. It's very uncomfortable. We obviously can't make the first move. Only Ao clan can make the first move in order to set off the biggest turmoil in the 3 heavens." Chuyang didn't evade the taboo in front of Ao Yin. He said, "I'm afraid that we'll be hit with a bucket of shit if we make the first move. That would be very detrimental to our plan." Xie Guang'an sighed. "I don't know this, but I feel oppressed by this. But that's Motianji's plan. And we have our own plan." Chuyang nodded. His eyes emitted a crazy murderous intention as he said, "Xie clan is located in the north. So it and O clan are the only 2 clans in this vast area. O clan is close to the empty city now. So we might as well eradicate the O clan first. Then, we'll sweep away any worries in the future." Xie Guang'an was startled. He said, "How can this be? Didn't you say that we can't make the first move?" "Yes, who said that we can make the first move?" Chuyang strangely looked at him. Then, Xie Guang'an stroked his beard. He was somewhat perplexed. He stared at Chuyang. He wanted to say, "Aren't you contradicting yourself?" However, he didn't say it out loud after he thought for a while. "You can't make a move on Xie clan. But, you didn't say that you can't make a move on our heavenly armament pavilion." Chuyang mischievously smiled. "O clan ambushed us in the past. And they almost killed us. So, how can we not take revenge for this hatred?" Xie Guang'an smiled and said, "Minister Chu, It's understandable that your heavenly armament pavilion would make the first move. But forgive me for being blunt. Your heavenly armament pavilion isn't weak. But your strength is still a bit weak if you want to swallow the O clan. Yes, Chu Yang said in a matter of fact. Don't we still have you? Moreover, the Xie clan is at the heart of the struggle. So, all the big clans have sent their experts here to protect their allies. Don't tell me that they're so idle as to watch us fight with our lives on the line? Xie Guangyan was stunned. Didn't you tell us not to move? When you wear our heavenly armament pavilion's clothes, and put on our heavenly armament pavilion's masks, you are our heavenly armament pavilion's people. Who told your Xie clan to take action? Chu Yang was somewhat depressed. It was just a trivial matter, yet he had to explain it for so long. As the head of the family, he couldn't even compare to his son. However, he didn't know that the Xie clan had always been under the control of the Elders' Council. And there was also the old ancestor above the Elders' Council. Xie Guangyan had become the clan lord in order to pave the way for Xie Danxiong to take over the clan lord's position in the future. Xie Danxiong had been born with the best aptitude in the Xie clan. So, the old ancestor had personally appointed him as the next clan lord. Xie Guangyan had ascended to the position of clan lord because of his son in order to avoid disputes within the clan. I see. Xie Guangyan hesitated. Is this all right? Chu Yang frowned and said, I'm in charge now. What he meant was, you stand further away and don't talk. Chu Yang immediately sent out a message. All the experts were to get ready. Then he issued the order to fight. Chu Yang didn't hesitate. All the experts had assembled in a moment. There were 13 emperor-level experts and 200 king-level experts in addition to the external experts. Chu Yang didn't use the experts below the king level. I also want to participate in this battle. Ao Xie Yin stepped forward and said seriously. He had already put on a mask on his face. All right, Chu Yang agreed. Wait a moment. Xie Zhiqiu stepped out of the void with a loud shout and arrived in front of Chu Yang. The aura of this Xie clan's old ancestor had advanced a lot since the last time they had met. It had become deeper like the sea and more majestic like a mountain. It seemed that his cultivation had made a breakthrough after he had obtained the mysterious jade ice crystal. He then said, Little brother, the Xie clan and the O clan have been here for several generations. Moreover, both sides have always been hostile, but they have never fought each other. Do you know why? Is it because of the O clan's poison? Chu Yang's eyes flashed. Yes. Xie Zhiqiu nodded and said, The O clan's poison technique is the best in the three heavens. This old man forbids you from going into battle if you don't have a way to deal with the poison. That's because you won't be going to annihilate the enemy. Instead, you'll be throwing away your life. The poison is everywhere in the O clan's courtyard. It's impossible to guard against it. Chu Yang faintly smiled. He then said with confidence, Senior, don't worry. This junior already has a plan for this. He asked GMO and Luo Kadi to carry out 2 big jugs of wine from their rooms. Each jug weighed 50 kilograms. They then shakily placed them in front of the team. This is my specially made detoxification wine. Everyone can drink a bowl of it. It can guarantee that you won't be invaded by 10,000 poisons for a period of time. Chu Yang calmly said, Won't be invaded by 10,000 poisons? Xie Zhiqiu's pupil shrank. Let me try. Then he stepped forward and scooped a bowl of wine. He drank it in one gulp. Then he took out a pitch-black pill from his bosom and put it in his mouth. Old ancestor, you can't. Xie Guangyan loudly shouted. His voice was filled with panic. It doesn't matter. Xie Zhiqiu pushed him aside. He smacked his lips after a long while. Then, he suspiciously said, This poison dragon pill has lost its effect after drinking a bowl of wine. What kind of medicinal wine is this? Why does it taste like our Xie clan's drunken immortal? But, our drunken immortal doesn't have the detoxification function. Chu Yang's face twitched. He let out 2 dry coughs and said, This old man is old. But his nose and mouth are still as intelligent as ever. He can even tell that this is your Xie clan's drunken immortal. These 2 jugs of wine were the same wine that Chu Yang had drunk on the night when he had made an agreement with the Xie clan. Chu Yang had single-handedly challenged the drinking capacity of the entire Xie clan on that day. So, the Xie clan's people still remembered it vividly. The old ancestor had set an example. So, the others also drank the wine one by one without any hesitation. Of course, more than half of these 200 people would have vomited on the spot if they had known that Chu Yang had drunk this wine. The sword spirit couldn't change the fact that this wine had entered Chu Yang's mouth first. Then, it had entered Chu Yang's stomach, and then it had entered the tribulation space. In a sense, this wine is Minister Chu's excrement. Ah, Minister Chu had no choice. How could he have so much water in such a hurry? It would have been too wasteful if he had used the vitality spring. There were 2 jugs of wine in the tribulation space. So, how could he not use them? Moreover, the wine's efficacy would have dispersed a bit faster. Since that's the case, this old man will exercise his hands and feet tonight. Leave that old poison of the O clan to this old man. Xie Qiu wasn't afraid of the O clan's poison after drinking the wine. So, he was full of heroic spirit. The old ancestor of the O clan had always been in the O clan's secret chamber. He and Xie Qiu were old enemies. The 2 old men were well aware that the other wasn't dead. So, it was time to decide who would live or die. Xie Qiu had just broken through to the martial monarch realm. So he wasn't afraid of the old poison. So he naturally didn't put that old poison in his eyes. Everyone, today's plan is like this. Chu Yang drew on the ground with his long sword. Tonight, we will destroy the O clan. Chu Yang finished the arrangements. Then he shouted, "My heavenly armament pavilion will rise in 3 days from tonight." Roar. Only Dong Wushang and the others responded. The others looked at King of Hell Chu with a strange look in their eyes. "We are the ones fighting. How can your heavenly armament pavilion rise?" Minister Chu didn't care about this. "You are the ones fighting. But, you are using the name of our heavenly armament pavilion. Who will know that you are the ones fighting after this battle? We have offended so many people in the northern wilderness. So, it's inevitable that some people will come to settle accounts with us. But who will dare to come and look for trouble if those guys know that we have the ability to destroy the O clan in one night? Moreover, the heavenly armament pavilion will become famous. So, who would be afraid that no one will come to join us? Tonight's operation must be fast. Moreover, we aren't afraid of the O clan's poison. But we must make use of their poison. Don't confront them head-on if you can mount a sneak attack. And, don't call yourselves heroes if you can catch them off guard." Chu Yang's eyes flashed like lightning. He then said with a righteous face, "First, pretend to be dead when you encounter poison. Then, wait for the enemy to arrive at your side. Then kill them violently. We must caress the necks of these poisonous creatures of the O clan, like a gentle breeze. We must caress their necks like lovers. We must let them die in surprise and trembling." Minister Chu said with an awe-inspiring righteousness. "I call this operation Operation Love-O. Do you remember it?" Everyone broke out in cold sweat. This guy in front of them was extremely treacherous. Of course, the most awesome thing was that he could deploy such a vicious, sinister, despicable, and wretched battle plan with an awe-inspiring righteousness on his face. He was a genius that had never been seen before. He is Operation Love-O. Who can withstand such a fatal caress? Get ready now. Everyone will set out after a quarter of an hour. We will rush into the O clan at the 3rd watch of the night. Burn, kill, and plunder. Cut the weeds and dig up the roots. Don't leave a chicken or a dog alive. There won't be a O clan for 3 days after tonight." A murderous intention flashed in Chu Yang's eyes. That night, it was late at night. The sky was dotted with stars. The earth was dark. The O clan's ancient castle was continuous on this hillside. A feng shui master would have recognized the O clan's headquarters if he had come here to take a look. It was the location of a dragon's vein in this mountain. It was a dark night. More than 200 experts had gathered in a small forest more than 5 kilometers away. They were glaring like tigers watching their prey. Everyone was crouching in the underbrush. Their eyes were flickering with a bright light. "Let's go." Chu Yang waved his hand. He took the lead and rushed out. Gu Du Xing, GMO, Rui Butong, and Tan Tan followed closely behind. They went out like a cool breeze. Dong Wuxiang and Luo Kudi weren't suitable for this operation. Dong Wuxiang was too tall and sturdy, and Luo Kudi was somewhat lacking in this aspect. So Chu Yang and the other 4 people could only start the operation. The people behind them watched the 5 people rush out. They nervously opened their eyes wide. But then, they rubbed their eyes with their hands. What did I just see? How did these people disappear after they went out? There was only a piece of flat grassland in front of them. The highest part of the grassland was only up to their calves. But these 5 people were madly rushing and flying on this grassland. And they were moving without making any sound. Chu Yang and the others had already rushed out 7 or 8 kilometers with a whoosh sound. Their movements were like the caress of a lover. They were gentle and graceful. They were full of tenderness and affection. But they were also full of deadly murderous intention. The gate of the O clan's castle was right in front of them. The 4th watch has been delivered. Chapter 593. Everyone in the grove looked at the faintly discernible silhouettes flickering under the starlight. Their hearts were in their mouths. The O clan had been an aristocratic clan for hundreds of years. So how strong was its castle? Chu Yang and the others were very skilled in concealment techniques. However, they couldn't enter the city directly. So, what kind of method would they use to trick the O clan into opening the gate? Everyone still had doubts in their hearts. King of Hell Chu had said that he had a way. But, what method would he use to make the O clan open the gate in such a tense situation? Therefore, no one had dared to think of a strong attack. Even a monarch-level expert wouldn't necessarily be able to blast open the gate of the O clan. Everyone was looking at King of Hell Chu at this moment. The O clan would be destroyed tonight, as long as King of Hell Chu could open the gate. However, everyone would have no choice but to withdraw if the gate couldn't be opened. It was so quiet that it seemed as if the late-night wind had condensed into a silent oppression. Suddenly, a sword light appeared in the dark night and illuminated the night sky. A bleak and vicissitudes of life aura seemed to have come from ancient times. And it swept through the world in a flash. The entire world suddenly changed from the early autumn season to a biting cold wind. A cold light appeared. It was extended. A lightning-like sword light split the entire world in a split second. Even the void of the late night trembled fiercely at this moment. The sword light was like a dragon as it crossed the sky. It was hundreds of feet long, and was as thick as a drum. It majestically rushed towards the gate of the O clan. It seemed as if it could topple mountains and overturn seas. Everyone was petrified. King of Hell Chu had said that he had a way. But it turned out to be a barbaric and hooligan's method. He had used his sword to blast open the gate of the O clan with absolute violence. This bastard even said that he would use the fiery light as a signal. Everyone had thought that he had a way to sneak in. But they hadn't expected that he would use the fiery light as a signal. Motherfucker. Why would he need the fiery light as a signal? Even a blind person would be able to see your sword light within 200 miles. Crazy. More than 200 experts sighed at the same time. Then an idea arose in everyone's mind. Get ready to retreat. This King of Hell Chu has no plan. I thought that he would have a way. But it seems that he was just bragging. Today's training. Motherfucker. How could the O clan have survived until now if you could split open the gate of the O clan with your sword? Hadn't they been destroyed 700 to 800 times already? How childish. Did he think that he was a saint-level expert? However, in the next moment, everyone who was sighing suddenly widened their eyes and rubbed their eyes with their fingers. Their faces were filled with disbelief and horror, as if they had seen a ghost. I must be dreaming, right? That ball of sword light boldly rushed over. The sword light had barely risen when someone on the O clan's gate tower noticed it. Enemy attack. A shrill scream was heard, and the copper bell that sounded the alarm kept ringing. Then, clusters of gold and silver light appeared, and streams of 5-colored black smoke poured down one after another. Countless concealed weapons and poisons instantly filled the area, within a radius of 500 feet, in front of the O clan's main gate. However, all these lights and colors were overshadowed by Chu Yang's sword light. Ding 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 sounds rang out continuously. Gold and silver light scattered in all directions. The poisonous smoke that had just started to spread out suddenly disappeared. Suddenly, a few miserable screams rang out from the city gate. The sword light had struck back the concealed weapons and had gone to look for their masters. However, that sword light carried the power of a thunderbolt and resolutely crashed into the gate like a meteor. This door was a full 10 feet thick and made of steel. It was as heavy as 10,000 kilograms. But it seemed as if a giant's belly had been pierced in front of this sword light. And a big hole appeared in front of it. There were neat traces of tearing steel plates around the hole. Chu Yang had rushed into the O clan's castle with his sword. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. What kind of monster is this? Even Xie Zhiqiu, who had the highest cultivation among everyone present, had opened his eyes wide, and his mouth wide open, as if he had seen a ghost. He was so shocked that he was almost speechless. Xie Zhiqiu had obtained the mysterious jade ice crystal, and had finally broken through the barrier of monarch-level expert. However, he asked himself, I wouldn't have been able to penetrate this gate of the O clan if I had a divine weapon in my hand, and I would have used my lifelong cultivation to drive it. But this king of Hell Chu has not only penetrated it, but has also created such a big hole. Moreover, he has also rushed in. Then a few screams came out from inside. Then, a sword light lit up outside, and followed closely behind King of Hell Chu. Then, the man and the sword rushed in together. The entire space was suddenly filled with a biting cold sword intention when this sword came out. It seemed as if a cold wind was whistling through the earth. Then a neat clang sound resounded in the entire world. Even the experts who had been lying in ambush in the grove were no exception. The swords on the waists of all the people who used swords vibrated at the same time, and saluted the emperor. This was the worldly principle of the way of the sword. Sword Emperor. This Gu clan's young clan lord Gu Duxing is an extremely pure sword emperor. He doesn't have the slightest bit of impurity. Xie Zhiqiu grabbed his head and exclaimed in surprise. However, this sword cry had reminded everyone, and they rushed out one after another. Dong Wushang had already taken the lead and rushed to the front. GMO, Tan Tan, Rui Butong, and the others had already entered the castle after Gu Duxing. Countless experts of the O clan were crazily rushing out from inside the castle. Everyone knew that the O clan would be finished if they couldn't guard the main gate and drive the enemy out. Chu Yang's body was taken over by the sword spirit at that moment. Then he suddenly burst forth and launched the move "What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world?" with all his strength. The 10,000-year evil spirit had erupted. Moreover, the calamity sword had an invincible sharpness, and the peerless might of the sword move had broken through the 10,000-pound main gate of the O clan with irresistible force. Then, he rushed into the O clan with his sword, and smashed the inner gate of the O clan. Then, he slaughtered all the experts of the O clan who had been guarding the main gate. Blood flowed like a river. Then, Chu Yang stuffed an incomplete version of the heavy pill into his mouth. The sword spirit waited until Chu Yang's martial power had recovered by half. Then he quietly withdrew, and let Chu Yang take control of the situation. The experts of the O clan rushed forward like a tide. Chu Yang shouted loudly, and a cold light shone in 10,000 fathoms. He made a move, and the world was suddenly filled with cold lights. In fact, the entire sky was filled with cold lights. A ding-ding-dang-dang sound was heard, and blood was bursting out from time to time. The sword light flashed beside him, and a sharp sword energy swept past him. It then rushed into the crowd without stopping. The swords of dozens of enemies issued a clanging sound at the same time. Sword Emperor. Gu Duxing has arrived. Gu Duxing let out a long and loud shout, and the black dragon sword issued a sword cry at the same time. Then it started to tremble and churn in the air. GMO, and the other two rushed in after that. The might of the five brothers' joint attack was like that of a mad tiger. In fact, they managed to push the experts of the O clan back outside the gate tower. However, the space was vast and the pressure had multiplied once they had gone out. Countless experts of the O clan had rushed over from all directions. Chu Yang and the others had rushed in, but the situation still wasn't optimistic. This place was still narrow. Those old monsters would have been able to take advantage of the terrain to firmly block everyone if the O clan had firmly guarded this place. In fact, even 200 king-level experts wouldn't have been able to display their full strength due to the narrow terrain. And they would have been annihilated by the enemy. Therefore, Chu Yang must immediately change the present situation. Rushing in wasn't a victory. The real battle would take place in a short period of time after they had rushed in. Chu Yang and the others must guard the passage. They must open the passage and allow the experts of the O clan to calmly enter the castle. Only then would their initial plan be considered a success. Chu Yang let out a long and loud shout. GMO and Gu Duxing immediately stood in a row. Then, they suddenly took 3 steps forward and crazily attacked the enemies. They were protecting Chu Yang behind them. GMO and Rui Butong's bodies were splashed with blood during these 3 steps. They had been injured. Chu Yang took advantage of this small gap and roared loudly. Shwa! 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 He threw out dozens of big oil barrels one after another from the tribulation space. Each barrel weighed hundreds of kilograms. They fell down with a loud rumble, and the kerosene splashed in all directions. Then he flicked his hand and threw them out like meteors. Boom! The flames came in contact with the kerosene and started to burn fiercely. Bang! The raging flames soared to the sky, and the oil barrels exploded in the crowd of the O clan. Ah! Oil barrels! That bastard! Where did he get so much kerosene? Old Third Exine is burning. Quickly retreat. Quickly retreat. I don't believe that they can rush in from such a big fire. Blood-curdling screams resounded unceasingly. Then boom boom boom, several oil barrels exploded at the same time. Flames soared to the sky in front of the city gate's main gate. This stopped the O clan's experts from rushing towards the gate. The raging flames soared to the sky. Blood-curdling screams resounded unceasingly. A gray-clothed man's silhouette rushed over from the direction of the O clan's inner palace. He was flying at such a high speed that he issued sonic booms in the air. He then shouted loudly, "What happened?" Several silhouettes soared from the direction of the inner palace and rushed over here. Chu Yang took large strides to welcome them. The 7 shades cold energy floated around his body and wrapped Gu Duxing and the others inside. He let out a long and loud shout, and the raging flames suddenly separated on both sides. Then, the 5 brothers strode out of the flames and suddenly rushed in. It seemed as if 5 fiendish demons had suddenly rushed out of the raging flames. Their entire bodies were emitting a sinister and vicious aura. Chu Yang burst into laughter and said, "Nothing happened. It's just that the King of Hell has come to invite us to dinner. Everyone, please go to the Netherworld's 18 layers of hell for a meal, sightseeing, and a permanent residence there. The entire O clan is here. Get ready to attend the banquet." Ha ha ha. That gray-clothed old man coldly snorted. He floated down from the sky and shouted, "Ignorant Junior! This old man, O Fanga, will take your little life." The wind from his palm whistled and chopped towards Chu Yang's face. A cold light flickered and covered the top of his head. Black energy filled the air. He had launched the O clan's unique poison technique at the same time. It seemed as if a mass of dense fog had fallen down by the time he had landed on the ground. The dense fog was mixed with a cold light. Chu Yang sneered and said, "A trifling first-grade emperor-level expert dares to boast shamelessly in front of me. Die of old age." Tribulation sword flashed high up in the sky. He didn't dodge or evade. His sharp determination was buried deep, but it didn't change. He rushed forward to meet force with force. The sword light dazzled like a midnight flower, and suddenly exploded in the sky. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.